Perhaps we need some outside universal threat to make us recognize this common bound. I occasionally think how quickly our differences worldwide would vanish if we were facing an alien threat from outside this world.
Good evening and welcome to Spaced Out Radio tonight. My name is Dave Scott. We got a great show on UFOs and remote viewing. Dr. Paul H. Smith is here. Yeah, this guy can remote view literally what kind of towel you have in your shower to wipe your hands on. That's how good he is. We're going to get to him momentarily. He's been on the show before. Just a wonderful, wonderful man. I can't wait for this one. As we say hello to Race Fan in the gold medal position, Laura Lobbs with a silver, Robert Lamoth with a bronze medal tonight. Hello to Kitty Caddywhack, Frankie B. Baywatcher is here. Baywatcher will be signing autographs after the show. Line up to the left of the studio if you don't mind. To the left of the studio. All right, let's continue on. Eternity Eternal. Hillbilly Herb. Little Timmy James. How you doing, buddy? Road Flare. Lee the Bee. How you guys doing? Ethanol. Mama Catherine's here. Mwah! I love Mama Catherine. How are you, my dear? I hope you have a wonderful, wonderful evening. Les Paul Holland, nice to see you strumming away on your Gibson. And Scott B., how you doing? Cosmic Joe, thanks for coming on in, and thank you for kicking off the Super Chat tonight. It's a wonderful way to support what we do on this show on a nightly basis, so thank you very, very much. Mel WD-40 is here lubing us up for tonight's show because you always want to go into a show nice and smooth. You don't want that rigidness. Can't remote view when you got rigidness, I tell you. And it matches my shirt tonight because it doesn't have to hurt, people. It doesn't have to hurt. SOR Alien Lube right there. Get it on our store. I just got mine today. Yeah, I'm pretty pumped about it, to be honest. Captain K-Rod, how are you? JSCO, Little Cam on YouTube, literally ran 18 miles in 10 minutes to prepare for tonight's show. Yeah, guys, in good shape. Very good shape. Richard Minnick, thanks for coming on in. Number 19 in your program, starting at center ice from Stockholm, Sweden. Lars Jansson. Major Lee, good morning to you. Bigfoot Dwarf, how you doing? As we continue on with our roll call here. Operation Shutdown, how's it going? And who's next on the list? Thomas Rock, JMJ12. Biofuel Brad is here. Biofuel Brad will be signing autographs after the show as well. Line up to the right of the studio, if you don't mind, to the right of the studio. Noble Patrick, good to see you tonight as we continue on with our roll call. Necessary dialogue. Hi, Sandra. Hi, Sandra. Hi, Sandra. Karen in the Woo Train, thank you for coming on in. Gory Tiger. Spider Grandmother, welcome to SOR Chat. Yes, we are weirdos and nerds. We love it. Absolutely love it. Monica, nice to see you back. Kimberly Burgess, good evening to you. And who else is next here? Bob Thorson, thank you for coming on in. Scott Blight, how are you? Millennium, my man. Algaray over on Twitch, 750 pounds on the leg press machine, 27 times. Any remote viewer, he says, can verify that. 27 times at 750. That's actually impressive. Fapster, how you doing? You got bad breath, man. Doug Shelby is here. The Doug Shelby has arrived, which means we can officially start this show. Phil the Stalker. We live. How you guys doing? in the studio. Cody Eiler, thank you both for coming on in. And let's see, who else do we have here? Jay Truthseeker, nice to see you. Wolverine, thanks for coming on in. And let's see here. Let's get the radio side going. Hello and welcome to the radio and podcast side of Spaced Out Radio tonight. My name is Dave Scott. We have Dr. Paul H. Smith. Remote viewing and UFOs is the topic tonight. We're going to have a great time with Dr. Paul, as we always do. We are in roll call on our YouTube channel right now. So join us, will you, as we get ready to start this show. Thunderheart, how are you? Thanks for coming on in. Hi, Robert Redmond. Good to see you. Paul Demon, Moody Mongol. How you doing? What is on tap with you tonight, you weirdo? Scrolling on down, Melissa Kronwetter, thanks for coming on in. And we are caught up. Reminder to all of you, the super chat is open. It's a wonderful way to support what we do on this show on a nightly basis. As well, you can shop at our Spaced Out Radio store. We do not have ugly swag, people. No ugly swag. Throw those horns up. Let's rock. Mountains of Central British Columbia, to you listening around the world. This, my friends, is Spaced Out Radio. I am your host, Dave Scott, sitting in the captain's chair of SOR headquarters. We welcome you to tonight's show on our terrestrial affiliates around America, digitally on every major podcast network. Our website, spacedoutradio.com. We have a plethora of features for you. Rock out, Bumblefoot, read the news wire, check out our swag as well. You can follow us on X at Spaced Out Radio, Instagram at Spaced Out Radio Show, and on Patreon in the Space Crowd as well. Tonight's show is brought to you by Jive Charities. Help make the world 10% happier by visiting Jive Charities today. You can find them on our website. We got a power show of remote viewing tonight. Dr. Paul H. Smith is going to join us to break it all down for us. Then a very busy hour number 3. We have Swamp Dweller to kick things off. Little Timmy James will be here with the UFO report. It's Dave 101 night and the weird news of the week. So let's get right to it. Dr. Paul H. Smith was an Army psychic spy. For 7 years, he was a member of the U.S. military Stargate remote viewing program, where he worked as an operational remote viewer, training instructor, unit security officer, and unit historian. A founder and former president of the nonprofit International Remote Viewers Association, he is CEO of Remote Viewing Instructional Services, Inc. His book, Reading the Enemy's Mind, was a Reader's Digest book bonus feature and editor's choice selection. He is also the author of The Essential Guide to Remote Viewing, as well as co-producer of the Learn, Dowsing, and Remote Perception home study courses. This guy has done it all. He's been on radio for years. He loves talking about this subject, and for some reason, he likes coming on here, so we're going to bring him back on. Dr. Paul H. Smith, it is so good to have you back on Spaced Out Radio. How are you, my friend?
I am semi-okay. I had rotator cuff surgery 4 weeks ago, but I just couldn't stand not being here. I had to come back.
Good. Now, you weren't injured, like preparing for spring training here for pitchers and catchers, were you?
No. I'm not a big baseball fan. That'll probably hurt my image, but I'm not a big baseball fan.
Oh, that's all right. That's all right. You know what? I don't know what it is, but the last couple of weeks where we have mentioned remote viewing on this show, I've actually had a number of people in my chat room say they don't believe it exists. They don't believe it works. And we're going to get into that here momentarily. But for people who may not be familiar with it, who may be tuning in for the first time, what is remote viewing and how did you get started on it?
Well, remote viewing is, come up with an elevator pitch here. Remote viewing is a ESP based skill, extrasensory perception. It's an ESP based skill. Takes advantage of an underlying faculty all humans have, as far as the research has been able to tell. And it allows a remote viewer to perceive, describe, experience locations, events, people, places, that kind of thing, that are so shielded by distance, by actually intervening shielding of some kind, or here's the interesting thing, by time. It's possible to some degree to remote view the future, and it's even easier, relatively speaking, to remote view the past.
How does it work? How do we get our brains to focus in on this?
Yeah, well, of course, that's the multi-$1,000 question that we encounter all the time. There's lots of speculation about it. It's something, of course, mainstream science tends to reject it because it doesn't have a causal explanation. And anything that science can't come up with at least a plausible causal chain to explain in physical terms, it rejects, even if there's evidence for it, which there is a lot of evidence for remote viewing. And I mean, when I say evidence, not just anecdotal evidence, but actually legitimately derived scientific evidence that it actually works. We just haven't figured out how. Now, we have a sort of a general idea how it operates in the brain, but how does the signal get into our brains, so to speak? We don't know the answer to that. Some of my friends, they jokingly say it's just magic. And that's as good an answer as any as we have at the moment. Of course, this isn't any different than, in some respects, it is, of course, but in many respects, it's not that much different from other phenomena that we originally used, but didn't know how it worked. So, for example, magnetism is a classic example. They were using compasses long before they had any kind of electromagnetic theory that explained magnetism and how compasses work. And yet they still used them.
Okay, so the power of the brain is pretty amazing. And I don't think we've all tapped into it. I think everybody has had some sort of psychic intuition and ability that they just can't understand.
Mm-hmm.
But they just write it off as just one of those situations that happens to life. Can we all harness the brain in order to do this? Or is this a gift from God that only certain people can really delve into it?
Well, you know, when you get out there in the realm of psychic readings and that kind of stuff, and remote viewing is distinct from, psychic readings and such, but may partake of similar phenomena in human nature. When we get out into the psychic realm, you hear psychics all the time say, well, you can't do this. You have to have a gift like I do in order to be psychic. I call remote viewing the most democratic of all ESP abilities, because you do have to have a gift to do it. But the really great thing about it is everybody has that gift. It's like, with certain exceptions, everybody has the gift of sight. Everybody has the gift of speech. And everybody has the underlying ability to do remote viewing or some other kind of extrasensory based, have some other kind of extrasensory based experience. You just have to know how to operationalize it, how to make it actually efficacious in your life. And of course, that's what remote viewing is a way of doing that was developed actually pretty much in fact, inside a scientific laboratory.
You mentioned that it was developed. Many people over the years, I mean, even biblically speaking, there was prophets who could see the future, prophets who could look in on things, psychic people, intuitive people all over the board. How was this developed if it's been going on for what seems to be forever in humanity?
Well, so yes, there's this wild talent out there, I guess you could call it, that people do, they discover it, stumble across it themselves, or they are taught in oftentimes very arcane circumstances how to do it, at least according to the practices of that particular culture they're in. When we say developed here, it was the scientists that worked on this, and at behest of the intelligence community and the U.S. military, the ones that worked on it, their goal was to determine how you were able to eliminate as much as possible the weaknesses of the process and enhance the strong points of it. And that involved eliminating a lot of the conjecture and the speculation, the metaphysical explanations that people came up with. It doesn't involve angels or discarnate entities. It doesn't involve the movement of the stars or anything like that. Don't mean to disparage other people's beliefs here, but remote viewing is purposely abstracted away from all that metaphysical cultural background that most psychic behavior is conducted in. And they boiled it down using legitimate scientific research and such, boiled it down to its most fundamental parts to try and make it as, I'm going to use the word pure, it's probably not the best word here, but make it as pure as possible. There are a number of interesting associated phenomena with remote viewing or with any kind of psychic behavior. One of those is mental noise. And I'll only talk about this and then we'll go on with other topics here. But mental noise is all the racket that's going on in your brain. If you're trying to be psychic and you are aware that you're expected to do certain things, your left brain, and I'm going to speak very simplistically about left brain versus right brain, and the psychologists out there will probably have a conniption fit because I am being overly simplistic here, but your left brain, its job is to interpret the sense data and the other information that comes into our minds. It takes that and it runs with it and it makes up stuff oftentimes. And that's a real problem when it comes to remote viewing and being psychic in general, is because your left brain is there guessing and speculating and putting 2 and 2 together and come up with 5 and so on. And it messes up your people's attempt to actually use extrasense perception in a practical way.
Okay, so you mentioned about the extra perception, sensory perception, that is, sorry, about that, as I try to act smart here to compete on your level.
Oh, you don't have to act. I know you are.
Oh, you're giving me way too much credit. Way too much credit, my friend. The brain works in mysterious ways. Many people believe that, we don't use half or more of our brain or to the capacity that it is. Is it tapping into another part of the brain that we have to train, almost like working out in the gym to build muscle?
Well, there's a lot of misunderstandings here. I'm going to answer your question here in a moment, but I'll answer a different one that you didn't ask. So I've mentioned extrasensory perception. And people who hear that term think extra means an additional sense. So in other words, they talk about the 6th sense or the 7th sense. That's actually not what the word means. Extrasensory means the same sense you say extracurricular or you say extraterrestrial, right? Or extra this or extra that. It means not that you have an additional thing. It's that it's outside of a particular realm or domain. So the word extrasensory means you are getting perceptual experiences, but they don't come through your senses. They come from outside of your senses. Okay, so that's what that means. Now, it's still coming in and activating the sensory centers in the brain because we generally know that because when you get ESP-based experiences, they are very much imagery, audio, smells, taste, touch, all the main senses. It's just that the actual signal, whatever it is, bypasses those senses and it just directly stimulates the sense or the perceptual centers. Okay. Now let's go to how much of our brains do we use. There's this talk. Well, we only use 10% of our brains. That's actually nonsense. First off, visual processing what our eyes take in, or optical nerve processes. Visual processing actually takes up 50% of the contents of our brains. Okay, so already we know we use 50% of our brains from that, and then the other senses, of course, use more, and then of course the cognitive processes use more. So we really do use all of our brains all the time, but we don't always use them for the same things. Now, you can use your brain to solve a mathematical problem, or you can use it to speak a foreign language, or you can use it to daydream, or you can use it for all kinds of other things. And all you're doing is switching circuits back and forth and activating different parts of the brain. So it isn't that we're not using parts of our brain, it's that we don't use the parts that are operant when it comes to doing remote viewing or whatever similar we might be doing. We don't use those without intentionally deciding we're going to use them, or at least some aspect of us gets activated and we do that. I hope that's clear. I think I garbled it a little bit, but
I think that makes sense. I guess it's just the idea that for many people out there, who aren't sure what this is or how to do it, that we don't think that we can capture these abilities within our own, whether it's through meditation or whether it's through, mind practice or what, however you get there, and that there's some people out there who've never trained on it before who know they can do it.
Yeah. So it's not really a capability issue. It's a confidence issue when you think about it. To use a more straightforward approach. So I originally majored in art in college, and I got pretty good at art. I'm going to say I'm a world-class artist by any stretch of the imagination, but I'm still pretty good at it. And people will see my work and they'll say, wow, I wish I could do that. And I tell them, you can. You just have told yourself you can't do it. And so you haven't gone to the trouble of figuring out how to do it, being taught, taking lessons, practicing, experimenting, trial and error, whatever it is you want to do. I've found, and I totally believe this, that if you are reasonably competent in any particular skill, there's no reason why you can't apply yourself and learn other skills, including, for example, if you happen to be good at photography, you could be good at drawing or sketching or painting. You just have to learn how to do it, and that's the same thing that applies here with things like remote viewing.
Dr. Paul H. Smith is our guest tonight on Spaced Out Radio. So you joined the Army. Did you expect to be joining a remote viewing program when you joined all those years ago?
Well, I joined to learn Arabic, actually, originally. I had been very interested in the Middle East since when I was 14 years old. And I know that's an odd thing to say, but it's true. In fact, I first became interested while I was hauling hay and moving sprinkler pipes on a farm up in the mountains of Wyoming. I read some books. I heard somebody give a talk about this, making a trip to the Holy Land, and I got really fascinated, not because of the biblical stuff, but because of what was happening there at the time and has continued to happen there ever since. And so I wanted to learn Arabic, and I had gone on a mission for the LDS, or the Mormon Church, to Switzerland. I came back home and I got married, and I was at BYU, and I'd taken all their Hebrew classes. I wanted to take Arabic, but they didn't have Arabic. My wife says she had wanted to be a Russian linguist, but she had some physical issues that had kept her out of the Army. She said, well, you could go down and enlist in the Army to be an Arabic linguist, and they'll even pay you to learn it. And I'm thinking, I don't want to join the Army. That's the last thing in the world I want to do. And she kind of pitched a fit, and I'm grateful she did. At the time I wasn't. So I said, okay, just make her happy. I went down to the recruiter, and it was all over at that point. I happen to have pretty good language aptitude, and so I got to be an Arabic linguist. And I was going to learn Arabic, do my tour, and get out. But I like to tell people, every time I went to get out, the Army gave me something even more fun or interesting to do. I just couldn't quit right then, and so that's how I got started. I had no idea remote viewing was a thing. And when I first enlisted, hardly anybody knew it was a thing. I never put the words remote and viewing together. I was an Arabic linguist, and at some point decided I'd go to officer candidate school and become an officer. And so I did that and was commissioned intelligence, got sent off to a special forces unit in Germany, which was a really interesting time. Came back and got assigned to Fort Meade, Maryland. There's a whole bunch more of the story. I'm saving you from the details. Assigned to Fort Meade, Maryland. And what I didn't know was I had moved in next door to the operations and training officer of the remote viewing program, and across the street from one of the remote viewers. And these guys were weird because they were living in military quarters. Their names, Captain Atwater and Captain McNair, were on the doors, but they didn't wear uniforms. And Tom had a full beard. And I'm going, well, what do you guys do? And they said, well, we can't tell you. I said, well, I know you can't do that, but you can at least tell me what kind of thing. Are you in human intelligence? Are you in signals intelligence? Are you in imagery intelligence? They said, none of those. And I said, what do you mean none of those? There's nothing else. I mean, that's there, there's Mazit and stuff, and they didn't do that either. And I said, what else is there? And they said, well, we just can't tell you. And I said, well, do you travel? Thinking that would give me a hint as to what kind of stuff they did. I said, do you travel? And they said, no. And then Tom said, well, sort of. And I go, sort of, what does that mean? They wouldn't tell me. And then one day they knocked on my door and they said, we've been watching you and we think you might be good at what we do. And I said, well, what do you do? And they said, we still can't tell you, but I'll tell you what, you take these tests. If you score where we think you're going to score, we will read you on and give you the opportunity to volunteer for what we do. I said, all right. So I took the test, and they were mostly conventional psychology tests with a few little odd things in there. And they said, okay, you're good. And they took me over, and Tom sits me down, and there he is in his button-down shirt and Levi's and with a beard, and says, our mission here is to collect intelligence against foreign threats using a parapsychology discipline known as remote viewing. We want to invite you to become a psychic spy.
Okay, I'm going to hold it right there.
Okay, I'll tell you what happens after that.
Okay, I have to ask, what goes through your mind when all of a sudden you get an offer like that? Are you thinking, what the hell is this? Is this a joke? Are they testing my intelligence here?
See, you are psychic because you're reading my mind. I was just about to tell you that. So while Tom is reading me on, while he's telling me that statement, my brain is going, and so there's a little backstory here. As a kid, I was fascinated by science fiction, and particularly found interesting science fiction that involved extrasensory perception, like Zena Henderson or Pilgrimage books, and Andre Norton with her telepathic cats and all that kind of stuff, and plus others, And there's even some of this in Dune, if you think about it, in the Dune series. And I'm fascinated by the ESP stuff. But in junior high, I was in a science fair project where one of my colleagues, a young woman who ultimately actually became a lieutenant colonel in the Army, much to my surprise, she did a science fair project involving the ESP cards, the stars and the wavy lines and stuff you see at the start of the Ghostbusters movie. And it was a total failure. Everybody failed. It didn't work at all. And particularly me, I was psychic as a brick, as you like to say. So I'm thinking, there's really not anything to this, right? But I'm still interested in the science fiction and over the years. And then I get here, and Tom is telling me this, and he's saying that. I'm thinking, I really was interested in ESP. I concluded it didn't work. He's telling me there's a line item in the federal budget that pays to teach military personnel how to be psychic. I said, it must be real. There's no way in heck I'm not going to do this. And so as soon as he was done, he said, now you have 24 hours. You can talk to your wife. You can tell her these 3 things. And then you can tell us tomorrow. I said, I don't need that. I don't have to tell my wife anything. I absolutely want to do this. And he kind of fell out of his chair because none of the people they had pitched before, they all were kind of nervous about it. And I don't know, I have to think about it. And I was just absolutely emphatic. There's no way I'm not doing this unless I fail at it. Right. And that's what was going through my mind.
Man, I could just imagine, like, I wouldn't even know how to go to my partner and say, oh, by the way, the Army wants me to become a psychic spy.
Yeah. See, I couldn't tell her that. I couldn't tell her that.
Or whatever that story may be. But I mean, man, I got so many questions, but we're just running out of time here at the bottom of the hour here. Dr. Paul H. Smith is our guest. We're going to continue with the remote viewing talk because his story is incredible, the knowledge that he has. And we'll also check into some UFOs and other topics du jour because, hey, we're allowed to talk about anything on this show. As long as it's weird, strange, anomalous, and mind-bending. This is Spaced Out Radio. My name is Dave Scott. We will be back right after this, everybody. All right, we are clear.
Okay.
Hi, Mr. Cowley. MJ. Good morning, Ian in the UK. Yennefer with a soft J. UFOs, not drones. Nice to have you here. All right. Linda. That was fast, man. That was a fast first half hour. Holy cow.
Am I still on camera?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
I won't do anything embarrassing then.
Oh, if you want, you go right ahead. Luca Vega, welcome to SOR chat. Yeah, you can do whatever you want here.
Can I step out for a minute?
Yeah, you go ahead. I'll just take you out and I'll bring you back in when you're ready. The lovely and talented Katie Page, how are you? If I had a hat on, I would tip it for you. See here. This is for you, Katie. Hold on. The lovely and talented Katie Page is here. I did that just for you. Jeff Steve Garvey, he'll hit a home run for you. John Jackson, nice to have you here. Luca Vega is taking coffee orders. Does that include stripping in the chat room, Deb? Deb, do it's whatever you want to do. It's your fancy. Check out my new shirt if you haven't seen it. You can get one yourself. Remember, it doesn't have to hurt. Mm-hmm. You can get those on our website, spacedoutradio.com. SOR Alien Lube. Philip Blair, how you doing? Said it doesn't have to hurt Moody Mongol. It totally is a size 8 Fapster. Phyllis, send it back north. It's only freezing today. It's 32 Fahrenheit, 0 Celsius. T-shirt weather, to be honest. All right, let's bring our good friend Dr. Paul back in. How you doing, boss?
Okay, so far. I've been having a good time. You really know how to show people a good time, right?
I like a good time. All right, we got about a minute to go here.
Okay.
All right. Thank you tonight to Cosmic Joe and Deborah Rooney for the super chats. Very much appreciate the love and support of SOR. And don't forget, you can shop at Spaced Out Radio Store. We do not have ugly swag, people. No ugly swag. You can wear our stuff out in public and actually be proud to wear it. Because it works. Because there's nothing ugly. It's true. Have you, Zeddy? How you doing? Brian, how you doing? All right, we got about hold on. No, we got about like 37 seconds. I miscounted my time. What a jerk. Just wasting your time now. What a jerk. All right. 10 seconds. Hi, Sierra. How are you? Here is the second half hour of Spaced Out Radio tonight. The conversation is remote viewing with Dr. Paul H. Smith. My name is Dave Scott. Thank you very much for allowing us in your ears. Reminder to all of you that if you miss portions of this show or others, you can always check out our free archives on YouTube or any major podcast network. Our website, spacedoutradio.com. We have a plethora of features for you. Rock out to Bumblefoot, read the news wire, check out our swag as well. Follow us on X at Spaced Out Radio, Instagram at Spaced Out Radio Show, and on Patreon in the Space Travelers Club. Remote viewer Dr. Paul H. Smith is here. If you want to check out his website, it's rviewer.com. That's rviewer.com. And Paul, thank you so much for being here. We greatly appreciate it.
You're welcome. This is probably more fun for me even than it is for you.
When you were in the Army doing this, you said you weren't allowed to talk about the remote viewing program. What was so specific and special about it that you pretty much had to sign your life away on it?
Well, there was a number of reasons. I mean, we're talking about a very highly classified project. In fact, I had top secret special compartment intelligence access before this, and I had to sign documents that are even more strict than the ones for that, and that's pretty down in the weeds. I mean, we're talking serious stuff. And there are a number of reasons for it being that deeply classified. One was because, the standard reasons. You don't want the Russians to know what you're up to, the Soviets to know what you're up to. You don't want to pique their interest about something that they may not know you're doing yet. Really, the reason for the most highest level of classification was actually to protect us. As far as any of the research showed then and still shows today, there's no way to shield against a remote viewer accessing your information. But the one solution to that is to take the remote viewer out, right? And none of us were interested in being the target of any kind of KGB assassin. And so the classification really was the top level classification to protect the sources, us being the sources. And to me, that seemed like a pretty good reason.
How come you're allowed to talk about it now then?
Because the CIA claimed that it didn't work. And if they were to come after me for talking about it now, it would be evidence that it did work and that they were lying about it, right? It was declassified. They did declassify it. In 1995 is when that process started and continued. And a major part of the archives of the program have been declassified and became publicly available, easily publicly available in 2004. And since then, all the documents are on the CIA website now. You can access them there. Although, frankly, unless you know what you're looking for or looking at, half the time you have no idea what the documents are telling you. Which is one of the reasons I wrote my first book, Reading the Enemy's Mind, is to kind of give background and history for all of what had gone on, and give people a general idea of what it was we're talking about, so they have a context, a framework in which to understand the information that ultimately was coming out about that time. And because the government declassified it, they admitted that it existed. There's still things I can't talk about, but they don't really have much to do with remote viewing. Sources and methods. Some of the feedback we got, some of the taskings we got were from secret agencies. I can't tell you about those, right? But generally speaking, most of what we did is now fair game.
How many people were involved in this? How many other remote viewers like you?
So there's actually two parts to that answer. The one is the science side, and the other one is the military side. In the Army, and then what became the DIA, Defense Intelligence Agency program, the Army program migrated into the DIA program. I counted up, based on all the records I had access to, a total of 45 people. And that includes remote viewers, administrative folks, managers, commanders, and that kind of thing. Now, that was spread out over, let's see, 77 to almost 20 years, not quite 20 years. There were times when there were only 5 people in the office, 3 viewers, a secretary, and the commander or office chief, branch chief, depending on whether it was a civilian or a military guy. There are other times when there are as many as 11 of us, 11 viewers, or people training to be viewers, plus a couple of admin folks and some project managers and the commander. So it varied, but if you added them all up, and of course we all overlapped, and we overlapped with each other over the time. If you add them all up, there's about 45 people associated with the program up between 1977 and 1995. No, I didn't finish the other half. The other half was the science side, right? And you had at Stanford Research Institute, later known as SRI International, you had the 2 chief scientists, Harold Putoff, we call him Hal, and Russell Targ. And then you had a couple of very prominent ESP psychics, really remote viewers. One was Ingo Swann, the one who actually originally developed remote viewing in the first place. Pat Price, who was really quite a miracle worker for a while. Hela Hamid, Keith Harari, but there were a bunch of folks that were fairly well known. And then there were literally probably 100 or 200 just part-timers that would come in, help with some experiments, then go their way and whatever. And so there were quite a few more people in the science side of it. Some really deeply engaged for years, others just there for maybe a few days and gone again. And so, yeah, that pretty much fills out the manifest of who is involved in terms of quantities.
Can you take our audience through, Dr. Paul, how you would get a mission? Like, would they just like come up to you and hand you an envelope and say, find this? Would they give you a number? Would they give you a location? How did that work?
Yeah, there are actually a couple of different modes of tasking. We call that process tasking. How do you task a remote viewer? The first rule is remote viewers should not know anything about the target. They should be, we call that being blind to the target. They should not know anything about the target. And there are very good reasons for that. The biggest reason is that generates even more mental noise, because everything you know about that target or could guess about the target, if it's there in your conscious mind, that's going to contaminate the signal line. And there'll be speculations. There'll be things you think you know that you don't know. There'll be things you're trying to guess and fill in the blanks and all that kind of stuff. It's better if you know absolutely nothing about the target and let that signal come in clearly and cleanly, and then I'll say translate it, I guess is as good a word as any, translate it into terms that then can be expressed objectively. So the viewer has to be blind, and it's also important under most circumstances that everybody else with the viewer be blind to the target as well. Anybody who's associated with the viewer before they do the session should also not know what the target is. The reason being, you don't want them to accidentally reveal information non-verbally or verbally or whatever to the viewer that doesn't come through psychic or ESP kind of means. Okay, so that's the setting you got to be in. So how do you do that? Well, one way you task a viewer without the people not knowing, who are not supposed to know, is you do put it in an opaque envelope, usually double wrapped, to make sure you can't see through it, right? And then that's presented to the viewer and said, there is a photo of something in this envelope. And the viewer knows it could be a location, it could be a person, it could be an object, it could be anything. There's a photo of something in this envelope. We want you to use that to describe this thing as it really is. Okay. And then the viewer goes through the process. They've been instructed, and we think it's the subconscious, or the Freudians like to call it the unconscious. I think that's a misnomer, but that's all right. I don't want to fight any Freudians on this. We think it's the subconscious that does the work, because the subconscious seems to be open to the entire universe. I'm speaking real kind of hand wavy here. Open to the whole universe, and subconsciously recognizes what the intended target is, and the conscious mind can't interfere, because that's where all the noise comes from. The conscious mind can't interfere, and the subconscious then is the one that channels that information into your mind. Now, so one way to do it is with the envelope. The subconscious mind somehow non-locally discovers what the content of the envelope is, and then accesses that in whatever that target is in real life, and provides information. We often used a number. You mentioned a number, and this really freaks people out. So we started off using coordinates, geographic coordinates. So we'd get a set of coordinates, and then we would try and perceive what was at that location and try and describe that. The problem is that you get a lot of critics and skeptics who say, well, what's to stop the remote viewers from just memorizing what's at the end of all these coordinates? You can give them a coordinate and they know what's there. Well, considering there's a practically infinite number of possibilities with coordinates, it would seem almost more of a miracle to do that than it would be to remote view. But we'll leave that aside, because it turns out coordinates don't make it easier to cheat. They make it harder to remote view, because after a while you do sort of get a feel for where coordinates were. We used to do a lot of Soviet Union targets. So we get a coordinate and we immediately recognize, well, this is in the Soviet Union somewhere. And then you start thinking what you know about the Soviet Union. Well, snowdrifts and wolves and pine trees and howling winds and all that stuff. And so that stuff ends up in your remote viewing session because your brain is speculating on that, when in reality the target's probably some laboratory in downtown Moscow, right? And so coordinates actually made it harder to be accurate. And so they decided to use what they called encrypted coordinates. And then they take an arbitrary number, and my favorite arbitrary number is 8675309. I knew you'd catch that. Yeah, 8675309. And let's say it's a practice target, and your trainer wants you to remote view the Eiffel Tower blindly, obviously. So your trainer gives you, let's say she gives you 8675309, and what she's done is on a separate piece of paper, she's written 8675309 equals describe the Eiffel Tower, perceive and describe the Eiffel Tower. Okay, then she gives you 8675309 without the part about the Eiffel Tower. So all you have is the number to work on. And then you take that number and you go through the process you've been taught, and you actually very often can accurately describe the Eiffel Tower. You might even recognize it as the Eiffel Tower in the process. Okay. Now, people say, well, how does that work? I mean, it's just a number. It has no content. 8675309 does not spell Eiffel Tower. It isn't the latitude and longitude for the Eiffel Tower. How does that work? And,
right.
And it's kind of a mystery, and I don't know how it works. It does work, but I have a speculation I'll tell you in a second, because we ran into this as viewers at Fort Meade. We were using we call them encrypted coordinates, because the story they told us was that they had these programmable calculators, and they would type in the latitude and longitude, and there's an algorithm in the calculator that we just give an arbitrary kind of a code, encode the coordinate, and we get a series of numbers that was actually the coordinate. It just was coded. And so, okay, well, we can deal with that. We're in the military. We understand codes, right? And so we would use those, and we did fine. And then one day, my old buddy Bill Ray, who was the commander at the time, he was the senior officer there. He's notoriously bad with tech, and so the tasker came in with the coordinate and said, gives it to Bill, and Bill types it in his calculator, and it doesn't work. Oh, dang it. He does it again. It still doesn't work. So he bangs it on the table. That's his solution to tech, is you bang it hard enough, it'll work again. And it still doesn't work. He says, "Oh, give me that." He takes a piece of paper and he just writes some arbitrary numbers on it and gives it to the tasker and says, "Go ahead, use that." And tasker goes out scratching his head saying, "I don't know what the It just happened. But we had a conversation about this afterwards. The tasker says, "You will not believe what Bill did before this session." Of course, the session worked out fine. And he explains to us, and we go, "They're not using encryption at all. They're just writing down arbitrary numbers and giving them to us." And we go, how could that work? And we have this kind of crisis of faith, like, oh no, we're going to fail now. And Skip Atwater, who was my next door neighbor and who was the ops and training officer, came in and sat us down and had a conversation. He said, "Look, what is a coordinate anyway? It's just an arbitrary number that we decide stands for something. We all agree, it's a convention. Everybody agrees around the world that these numbers stand for a location on the globe. So what's so much different from using that as a remote viewing tool and just using cut out the middleman, just use arbitrary numbers?" And we say, well, that sort of makes sense. And we continue to do it and it worked perfectly well. Now, what I think is going on is 8675309 and Eiffel Tower are linked in the intentionality of the tasker. The tasker intentionally links them. And then when you are given the number, your own intentionality, your own cognitive processes, your own mind, through the subconscious, gets that number and thinks, what the heck is this connected to? What's on the other end of this? And goes out into the universe. Again, this is hand wavy, right? Goes out into the universe, finds the number and finds what the number is linked to. And now your subconscious says, oh, okay, I get it now. Okay, let's go find the Eiffel Tower. So that's my best explanation. And frankly, I don't think anyone's got one that's any better.
No kidding. No kidding. We got about 7 minutes to go here before we got to go to break at the top of the hour. Dr. Paul H. Smith is our guest tonight. How did you, maybe that's the wrong way to ask. When you had the envelope or whatever it was placed in front of you and you had to read with it, where did you find the confidence to know that you were actually getting what that was?
Well, I started off without any confidence at all. In fact, my worry was in the first week I'd blow it and they'd send me packing back to the unit I came from. But they understand this is kind of an issue. This is like riding a bike. Until you actually do it, you can't learn it, right? And so they figured you're going to have a certain number of failures. In fact, maybe I should tell you about my first experience.
Sure.
Yeah, so I signed into the unit on 1 September 1980. Let me get this right, 1983. 1 September 1983. That very week, Skip Atwater ran me on my first ever remote viewing session. And what we used there was a particular protocol that they used a lot in the science research. It's called an outbounder, where you get a couple of people you know. Those folks, outside of your ability to see anything, they're given a randomly selected target, and it's a location within a half hour drive that they go to, and then they interact at that site as much as you can with that particular target. And then you, meanwhile, are back in a room with no windows, so you can't see where they go or anything like that. And you proceed to describe the setting where these folks have gone. Essentially, they act like a beacon. You say your mission is to find them psychically and then explore the area where they are. Okay, and it works really well. I've had lots of people do beacon experiments, and lots of them have succeeded, including a Hollywood movie director, but that's a different story. So Tom McNair and Charlene Schufelt, two of my colleagues there, went out to a location which was one of these huge water towers. It looks kind of like a spider with a central pillar, a big round mushroom top, and then all of these pipes coming down around the outside to support. And I guess, I don't know, a big blue thing, probably 40 feet tall, probably equally 40, 50 feet in diameter. And that's the target. So they go out there and they target. Well, meantime, I'm back in the remote viewing room, and Skip Atwater is there as my monitor or interviewer, as we call him. He was also blind. He had no idea where they went. And I'm describing this. I said, well, there's this room, and it's got kind of a pebbled surface on the walls, kind of off-white, kind of yellowish color, and there's windows, and there's little lacy curtains in the windows, and there's these little spindly tables, and there's something at the far end of the room with a window in it, and there's stuff behind the window. It's about waist high or a little bit higher, and Skip says, okay, because I don't think we had anything like that in the database. He knew that much anyway. He said,
Right.
okay, so we get it on. Then Charlene and Tom come back. They brought a bag of donuts for us all to share as we're driving back. And the process and the protocol is you come back, pick up the viewer. You don't give them feedback right away. You take them to the location, and then you let them explore it and experience it in the way that the Outbounder team did to get you the most vivid, most powerful kind of feedback or experience as you can. So we go back to this water tower, and I'm walking around, and it's this really interesting blue color, and it's all metal, and it's cold, and you bang on it, and you got this hollow sound. And I'm thinking, I got nothing like this. My days here are numbered. They are going to fire me tomorrow. And so I'm kind of dejected, and they know it, and they say, oh, it's okay. You'll have other opportunities. And get in the car, drive back. And as we're driving down the road back to the fort, my attention is suddenly caught off to the side. And I say, what's that over there? And Skip Atwater, who had figured out what had happened, and this was a great lesson for me. He said, if you don't get the intended target, it doesn't matter what you get instead. I go, what? He says, okay, let's go there. So we turned in, we went into this building, we walk in, and there's these pebbly, textured, off-color, whitish yellow walls, windows with lacy curtains in them, little tables with chairs, and at the very end, a counter with a window in it with a bunch of donuts behind it. What had happened was Tom and Charlene had broken protocol. You're supposed to go straight there and straight back. But they'd forgotten that, and they decided they'd be nice and bring donuts. So they had stopped into that donut shop, and they had got the donuts, and that's what I focused on, was the donut shop, not the target. And my father-in-law, when I told him the story years later, he said, yeah, I should have known you'd be the one to find the donuts.
Yeah, I'd be right there with you, my man.
Yeah.
I'd be right there with you.
Yeah. And so it's odd. It was kind of almost a better success than if I'd got the water tower, because it verified to me that it really did work. And I had my doubts at that point. It wasn't that I didn't have doubts it wouldn't work, because I'd sat in on a session with Joe McMonigal, who was another one of our more prominent viewers there. And it was very impressive. I have to tell you, he was very impressive. So I knew it worked. I didn't know if I could do it. But the fact that I did it, I realized, okay, I just need to fine tune my targeting a little bit better. And so that was really kind of a confidence builder. But your question was how you learn to do it. And the only way to do it is to do things like that, to put the viewer in a position where they either have to be psychic or they fail. And it's like riding a bike. You get a shove, and you either ride it or you fall over, one or the other. And if you fall over enough times, you'll eventually learn how to ride.
We got about 30 seconds to go here before we have to go to break, and I'm really interested in the next half hour of getting into the aspect of what you have remote viewed. It doesn't matter whether it's military or since you've retired, because we're going to get into all that, because I think a lot of people, and looking at the questions coming in from all over the place here, people are curious what you can and cannot remote view. And so I'm curious to pass that on to you, because I want to know if you've remote viewed UFOs. I want to know if you remote viewed these drones in New Jersey. I want to know if you've remote viewed the Bigfoot that I'm chasing up here in British Columbia. I mean, there's so much that you can do with all of this. And I'm real excited to pick your brain about that. Dr. Paul is our guest tonight. Hard to believe we're already through 1 hour of Space Out Radio.
Spaced Out Radio with host Dave Scott.
All right, boss, we are clear.
Okay.
We got about 6 minutes. I'm going to take a quick break here. I'm going to put you in the green room, and I'll be right back, okay?
Sounds good.
All right, be right back, everybody. All right. I am back. Let's see here. Who are we missing? Hi, Earth Coat Trees. How are you? Parasolo, how you doing? Audio, nice to see you. Let's see. Ty E. McGullowise, welcome to SOR Chat. All right, let's bring Paul back in. Thank you to everyone for tuning in tonight. Don't forget to hit subscribe and ring that bell if you are new here. We'd greatly appreciate it. And let's see here. Got some questions. Thank you to Joe, Debaruni, Lee, and Human Carl for the great super chats. Greatly appreciate the love and support. Don't forget you can shop at our Spaced Out Radio store. We do not have ugly swag, people. No ugly swag, so make sure you check it on out and get yourself some today. Here we go. Here we go with the second hour of Spaced Out Radio tonight. My name is Dave Scott. Thank you very much for joining us. We really do appreciate earning your listening ears wherever you are on this beautiful planet we call Earth. Hello to everyone listening in on our terrestrial affiliates around North America, digitally on every major podcast network. Our website, spacedoutradio.com, we have a plethora of features for you. Rock out to Bumblefoot, read the news wire, check out our swag as well. Follow us on X at Spaced Out Radio, Instagram at Spaced Out Radio Show, and on Patreon in the Space Travelers Club. The Desert Clam has set the password for tonight in the SOR Space Travelers Club. Pausiluent. Pausiluent is your password. Use it wisely, Space Travelers, as a clam. It's a password each and every night right here on Spaced Out Radio. Good friend of this show, Dr. Paul H. Smith, is here. His website, rviewer.com, the letter R, viewer.com. He was part of the U.S. Army Stargate program into remote viewing. He was a psychic spy. Yes, he was. He's proud of it, and he should be. Welcome back, Dr. Paul.
Thank you.
You ever remote view UFOs?
Yes, I have. Using the term UFO as a large category, extraterrestrial settings, UFO bases, stuff like that. Now, I'm very cautious about that. First of all, it's so easy, particularly if you know what the target is, to just mess it up, make a hash of it, and not have any data you can trust. But there's a whole long story from that. Maybe tell me where you want me to go with this.
Well, I think for a lot of people, they want to know, are they here? Are there bases here? Have they landed? Are they hiding right in front of us here?
Based on remote viewing, there are indications that they are here and that they have bases here. And I'll tell you that story. So, in fact, if you want to hear the whole story,
I do.
There is a book. It's not my book. It's written by, I mentioned Skip Atwater, F. Holmes Atwater, or Fred Atwater. He was the ops and training officer. And one of the things he did, I'll tell you the history of this. Let me see, where do I start with it? So I mentioned a guy named Pat Price before.
Yes.
Pat Price was a really amazing remote viewer. He died in 1975. There's some controversy about that, which maybe we can get into later if we have time, but it's not as important as to what you're asking. So Pat Price one day came into Hal Putoff's office at SRI, dropped a handful of papers on Hal's desk and said, well, I got bored last night, so I decided I thought I'd do a survey of the planet and see if I could find any UFO bases. He violated a couple things. He was front loaded. He knew what he was looking for, so he wasn't blind to this. But Pat was an amazing remote viewer, just absolutely amazing. No one's touched what he's been able to do since. But anyway, that's another sidebar. So he drops this pile of papers, and he said there are 4 bases on the planet that I found. One's in Mount, and I'm not going to get this right, Nyangani, something like that, in Zimbabwe. One's Mount Perdido in the Pyrenees. One of them Mount Hayes in Alaska, and one of them is Mount Zeal in Australia. And he had a whole bunch of details about it. One base was a maintenance base, another one was for some other things and stuff like that. And he did some sketches of spacecraft, presumably. We're going to assume that's what they were. UAPs, we call them right now. In fact, they look very much like the Tic
we don't
Tacs.
do that around here. We're UFO people here.
Are you really?
Yes.
Well, there's a reason for the word UAP, and maybe we can get into that later. But at any rate, it looked a lot like the Tic Tac that we hear about from the Nimitz incident. Right.
Mm-hmm.
So, long about 83 or 84, Putoff decided he was going to pass copies of Pat Price's results to Skip Atwater, because Skip, he would sometimes run us on targets in practice session, not operationally, run us on targets that were unusual, nothing, because he didn't want us getting used to the same old stuff all the time. He wanted to keep us off balance. It makes perfect sense.
Yes.
But so I think Hal knew he did this. So he said, well, here, try these and see what your folks come up with. Now, obviously we didn't have feedback from it other than what Pat Price had said about him. But he ran us on these totally blind. Joe McMonigal, he ran all 4 of them. I and 4 of my CRV, controlled remote viewing colleagues, and then plus 1 ERV, or extended remote viewer. Those are different types of remote viewing. He ran us just on the Mount Hayes site, the Alaska site. And he has recently compiled all of that into a book that he calls Project 8200. So the word project and 8200, Project 8200. And all of our sessions are in that book. So if you're curious to get the full details, you can go there. I think I wrote the foreword to the book to kind of give a context and everything. But mine is in there as well. And what's interesting was none of us knew we were working. We didn't even know Pat Price had done this. We didn't know Pat Price had remote viewed alien bases. We didn't know they existed. We'd never seen any of his work. We're totally innocent of any information about this. And we're working blind, and we're thinking, okay, well, here's another target. And, it's probably a Russian missile, or it's the Eiffel Tower, or whatever. And so, and that kind of answers a question you asked earlier. I'll get back to that. And in the process of doing this, we start producing weird stuff. I mean, literally weird stuff. I got the impression that it was a base, but it was a base some kind of base that I'm not familiar. It wasn't like a military base exactly, sort of, but sort of not. That there were people here that weren't people like I typically was associated with. And there were these objects that they were round. They were kind of 2 halves together. And I sketched one. It was just like that. It looked exactly like a Tic Tac, and very, very similar to Pat Price's, it turned out. They sketched all this stuff and said, these things are full of energy. They're intensely charged with energy. They kind of hover over the floor, and people were working on them. It turns out Mount Hayes was the one that Pat Price called the maintenance base, right? So I'm describing all of this stuff, and I have no idea. And in the end, I guess ultimately Skip must have told us what our targets were when we were all done. I don't recall the incident where he did that, but he never showed us the actual Pat Price stuff. Long about 2000, I want to say 2005, 2006, maybe 2007, somewhere in there. I was living in Austin, Texas, We moved there in 97 after I retired from the Army. I ran my business in Austin, but I was also there getting my PhD in philosophy, or as my wife said, unemployment. And so anyway, and it so happened Hal Putoff had left the program in 85, and he had a pretty serious research company there called Earth. Well, there's two parts of EarthTech and Advanced. Let's see, what's it called? Advanced Sciences Austin. I can't remember the name of it anymore. But he had his lab there, and when I taught a basic course, I always took my students over to his place, over to his lab, and he'd give them a lecture on the origins of remote viewing, the science behind it, and all that. It was great. I mean, they loved it because he was right there in person. I do that now with a live Zoom because he didn't come with me when I moved to Utah. So anyway, one day Hal and I are talking, and he says, well, I happen to have Pat Price's original documents. And I said, okay. I was a little vague that they even existed. I said, can I have copies? And he said, sure. And so I photocopied all of the Pat Price's things, and I was able to compare that to what I did. I had all those sessions, and it was striking the similarities between the data I was producing and the data that Pat Price had produced 10 years before in 1970. And see, this was in 84 when we did those sessions, and Pat Price had done that in 74. So it was 10 years later, and he'd been dead for almost 10 years, for 9 years. That was that was really kind of amazing. So I feel fairly confident. Well, one of two things could happen there. I could have remote viewed my feedback. In other words, I could have remote viewed seeing that. But remember, I didn't even really sort of know this stuff existed until another, well, almost 20 years after I'd done that session. And so while I suppose that's still possible, that I remote viewed the feedback 20 years earlier, it's kind of unlikely, really. And so I have some, I wouldn't say my life on it, but I have some belief that Price might have actually been onto something. Because a lot of the other sessions as well tend to corroborate what Pat had produced in his work. So that's one instance where I remote viewed apparently a UFO or two or three or a whole cave full of them. I don't know.
Did you see the aliens?
Well, I perceived individuals, right? People was how I describe them. I did not try and describe them in any real terms or draw sketches of them or anything, because I just kind of assumed they were just weird humans, and I was more interested in the tech stuff that was going on there. One of my colleagues, Mel Riley, sadly passed away several years ago, on a different one, did sketch entities. They're very rough sketches, so you wouldn't be able to actually categorize whether they grays or lizard people or whatever the current taxonomy of aliens is believed to be. But they did definitely look something other than human, the way you sketched them. So.
In our community of the UFO community, there is, a lot of controversy that surrounds Hal Putoff.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of people will say that he is a mastermind of deception. Others will say the gentleman is absolutely brilliant and has led his way into a lot of futuristic type of thinking with dark or black programs. What is your opinion of Hal Putoff?
Well, I'll tell you, I'm a little biased. I've been friends with Hal since 1984, and I've associated with him frequently when we were living in the same town. I was over at his office as often as every week. We go to lunch all the time, and I'm still in contact with him very regularly, telephonically, or we're in the same place at the same time. I go visit him every time I go home to Austin to visit, and so I know him really well. He's a really good friend. And although I am biased, I also have a pretty good feel for him. And I'll tell you what, he's not an agent of deception. I mean, in fact, if you try and figure out what he might be deceptive about, you're not going to find anything, because he doesn't tell stories. He just works on his science, and he's published a lot of papers over time on, like, the Albuquerque warp drive and what else is 0-point energy, 0-point field, and all that stuff. All straightforward research that he's been doing. He doesn't tell you any tales about it. In some ways, he's kind of a debunker, in fact, because well, he's still at his lab. He's like almost 90 now, and they sold the lab and unloaded his equipment, so he doesn't do that kind of research anymore. But he was the central clearinghouse for all these people who claim to have over unity power generation from these esoteric sources, including, for example, cold fusion. The Navy hired his lab to research some claims of cold fusion tech to see if it really worked or not. And he would have loved to have found some that did, but most of the stuff turned out to be perpetual motion machines that ultimately didn't work, right? So he's a very honest broker. He really is a very honest guy. I have never caught him saying anything false or even trying to be deceptive in any sense. So if you think he's deceptive, I want you to show me where you think he's been deceptive. Not you, that's the general you, right? Because you won't find anything. He is not that way, and that's not what he does. Now, I can't vouch for people, who might be in his sphere of influence, who themselves spin tales and stuff. But Hal himself does not. He's very honest.
Why do you think he's so misunderstood then, especially by the UFO community?
Well, I think people are looking for explanations, and they think he's hiding information. I think that's part of it. And he is to some degree, because some of the stuff he works with is classified, and he's very conscientious about not revealing classified defense-related information. And so, so there's stuff he doesn't talk about, he doesn't tell you about, but whatever he is allowed to tell you about, he does. Although he doesn't go around trying to advertise or anything like that. He's much more focused on doing what he wants to do, what he needs to do. What he doesn't waste time in social media, for example. To him, social media is just a total time sucker. And since he is closing in on 90, and he's still working hard, he's still doing lots of research and such. He doesn't do anything. In fact, I have a hard time getting him to do interviews with people. BBC wanted to do an interview with him about 10 years ago. And I was kind of working as triage for him in a way, as a screener for if a project seemed to be worthy enough that I could use up a bunch of points trying to talk Hal into it, then I would. But if it didn't seem to meet that criteria, I'd just say Hal's not going to do it. And he trusted me to do that. It still does when that happens. BBC wanted to do one, and I could tell that was a worthy project. And so I basically bugged him until he agreed to do it. And then he was glad he did it, right? But that's just to show you he's very jealous of his time. And he has an active family life. He's got I think he even has great grandkids now. And he and his wife Adrienne are always going out to visit them when he's not going out to DC to brief Congress or whatever. So I don't know. Yeah.
Why do you think he's still going?
He has a passion for this stuff. In fact, he really doesn't do anything with remote viewing anymore. He will still do lectures for me, and every once in a while he'll give a talk on it. But his passion is UFOs to begin with. He wants to get to the bottom of this, and he's kind of, I think, given up on the thought that he's going to accomplish, what he hoped to accomplish 20 years ago before he dies, but he's going to get as darn close as he can. He's fascinated by it, and he knows a lot about it now, and he has access to a lot of stuff, like David Grush and
yes,
and Lou Elizondo, and Semivan and Stratton, Jay Stratton, and all those guys. They're all close friends of Hal's, and it wasn't him that found them. They were brought to him. right? Because he's been immersed in the classified aspect of UFO research and stuff for a long time, and he became colleagues with these guys, and they all respect him greatly, absolutely respect him greatly. And whenever, like when Grush came out of the woodwork, so I was at Contact in the Desert. I just wrapped up my first speaking engagement at Contact in the Desert. It was the Monday after it ended. I'm walking out the door, and Judy Chatterton, who was my point of contact with those guys, and one of the extremely important behind the scenes organizers for Contact, just really helps out with a lot of things. Anyway, she comes out and says, "Did you hear the news?" I said, "What?" She said, "This whistleblower just blew the doors off of the UFO thing." She wouldn't have said it that way, but that was the sense of it. And I found it was David Grush. And my first thing was, before I even left the hotel where Contact was, I called Hal, and I said, "Hal, there's this guy named David Grush." He said, "Yeah." And I said, "He's saying a lot of wild things. Is he trustworthy?" And Hal said, "I've been working with him for years now, and he says he is absolutely trustworthy. What he says is true." And that was good enough for me. So, I don't have sufficient evidence yet. He obviously hasn't produced a lot of evidence. But if Hal knows about it and he's telling me that, if Hal didn't trust him, he'd tell me that. And if he couldn't express an opinion on it, he'd say, "I just can't tell you." But he said very emphatically, he's the real guy. He's the real deal. He's a very trustworthy guy. And so I from that, I know I can trust him.
Mm-hmm. So we only got 2 minutes left, and I just want to finish this up. If Hal is so much about trying to get the answer, why not be more public about it? Because he is like a secret squirrel. He's an anomaly.
Well, he is actually pretty public about it. I mean, he gave a public open talk at a joint conference of the International Remote Viewing Association and the Society for Scientific Exploration in 2018. I use the acronyms, but nobody would know what I was talking about. The SSE and the IRVA in 2018, and he said a lot of things that were mind blowing and showed slides and stuff. None of stuff that he said, and this stuff I can't talk about, and this stuff I can't talk about, but I can tell you about this, and I can tell you about this. And it was great. It was an awesome talk. I was very impressed. And he'll talk at conferences and stuff occasionally, but it has to rise to the threshold of worth his time. Okay. And he's not, and see, one of the problems I run into in the remote viewing community out there in the social media, like on Facebook groups and things like that, is there's always somebody wanting to know, well, that's last year's news. What can you tell me new now? Right. They're so hungry for novelty and for new things that they keep wanting you to reveal new things and new things and new things. They're sucking that up. It's an entertainment thing for them. And some people try and do that. But that's a waste of time to entertain them when you could be actually developing stuff. And that's what Hal is doing. He is developing stuff. He's not an source of entertainment. And he has absolutely no intention of being that. He would rather spend his time learning new things that ultimately may get out there if it's outside the classification envelope. In fact, it will get out there as long as it's outside the classification envelope. Classified stuff, he doesn't have power over that. But yeah, I mean, it isn't that he's keeping it secret, except what he has to keep secret. He didn't keep it secret. It's that he's not going to go around, and he's not an information source. He's not a news channel that's there to tell you everything that's happening.
I get that. I'm going to get you to hold on right there, sure, because when we come back, we got a ton of questions for you.
Okay. I love questions
regarding our audience. And right back with more Space Talk Radio right after
this. You're listening to Spaced Out Radio with your host, Dave Scott.
All right, we are clear.
Well, I hadn't expected to get off on the Putoff like that.
Oh, I'm going to hit you up right now.
Hmm.
Do you want to stay for hour 3 or do you want to call it at 2? Because we got a ton of stuff to go through yet.
Well, that's up to you. I mean, you had somebody else scheduled for 3, I think.
Oh, I could change that. It's just a text message. Unless you want to come back next week and finish the conversation.
Hey, I'd be happy to do it in 2 installments.
Well, let's do that way.
Okay.
Well, it'll be 2 weeks from now. I have the 21st, 22nd, and 23rd open.
Let me see what's going on in my life. I hit my 6 weeks mark for the shoulder surgery, and I hope to have the sling off, and that's on the 20th. That's emblazoned in my mind because I'm anxious to get rid of this. All right, tell me again what dates.
21, 22, 23.
They all look open in my calendar.
Well, you choose one, and I'll put you in there.
Let's just pick the middle of the week, the 22nd.
Sure. Let's do it.
So it'll be, again, 2200 my time.
Yeah.
Spaced Out Radio again. Okay. We've got the system down now. We know I have to use Chrome.
Yeah, that works. Excuse me. I'm just, you fascinate me so much.
Flatterer.
Yeah. No, I can already read the audience comments. They are all pumped up about it.
Oh, good.
Yeah. Yeah, they're all pumped up. So we'll do a part 2 in 13 days.
Yeah, I think that, in fact, I'll be fresher then too. I mean, by the time we hit midnight my time, I might fade out. I won't fade out a lot. I get my adrenaline gets going. But,
I hear you there, my
man.
Yeah. I hear you there. So much fun.
You ask good questions. You get me inspired, so that's good.
Thank you. Thank you. I do my best.
Somebody just said that they have my essential guide. Well, too bad that I can't sign it for them. Maybe they come to a conference I'm at or something. I'll be happy to sign it.
Mitchell Darling, how you doing? And anybody else sneak in here? No,
I don't normally pay attention to the chat, but since we're on a break here, there's some pretty amusing things. Some of these people are very clever.
Deb's like, I didn't give him permission to leave.
That's what I was looking at.
You gotta be careful of Deb. Once she gets a couple of hot toddies in her, you never know what she's gonna fire at you. All right. We got just about 2 minutes.
Okay. So I presume there's something going on the channel, like some kind of commercials or something.
On the radio side, we time everything out for them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the radio is a Canadian station?
No, we got 1 Canadian, 7 US.
Oh, you're syndicated.
We're looking for more.
Yeah.
Man,
so how do you do the questions? You pull them out of the chat? Or
what I'll do is I pull them out of the chat and I'll put them on the screen and I'll read the question to you. Just like that.
Okay.
Yeah, nice and simple. You don't need, all you got to do is answer. I do all the hard work. I do all the heavy lifting.
Oh, you're such a charitable person.
Well, somebody's got to do it. I mean, that's why I'm in the shape I'm in right now, doing all that heavy lifting. My goodness. Big thank you tonight to Joe Debaruni and Lee and Hugh and Carl for the great super chats. Greatly appreciate the love and support, everybody. Really do. And don't forget to shop at our Spaced Out Radio store. We do not have ugly swag, people. No ugly swag. And we got about 12 seconds. So good.
Dave is buff like a god.
Right. Oh, God, I wish. Here we go with the second half of Spaced Out Radio tonight. Remote viewing the topic. We're going to get to audience questions next. My name is Dave Scott. We always appreciate you tuning us on in wherever we are on this beautiful planet we call Earth. Reminder, all of you, that if you missed most of this show or others, check out our free archives by going to YouTube or any major podcast network. Our website, spacedoutradio.com. We have a plethora of features for you. Rock out to Bumblefoot, read the news wire, check out our swag as well. Follow us on X at Spaced Out Radio, Instagram at Spaced Out Radio Show, and on Patreon in the Space Travelers Club. Dr. Paul H. Smith, remote viewer extraordinaire, formerly of the U.S. Army Stargate program. His website, rviewer.com. I got a major question to ask you here, Dr. Paul.
Hmm?
So a couple months before Christmas, I bought my partner, my beautiful, lovely wife, a Christmas present that I knew she would love, knew she would adore. I hid it. I have no idea where it is. Any chance you could remote view this thing so I can find it and finally give it to her? Because I have no idea where this thing is.
Well, that is symbolic of a lot of projects we did at Fort Meade. But it was trying to find narcotics caches. It was trying to track down drug transporting ships, stuff like that, or hostages in the Middle East, or where the Iranians had stashed their silkworm anti-ship missiles. You know, we did a lot of that trying to find things, and remote viewing can help, but it's a descriptive methodology. It doesn't give you an address. It doesn't give you coordinates. What you can do is describe, well, it's in this place, and it's dark, and there's a stripe of red, and I get the impression of I can hear some roaring outside, like there's a generator or something nearby, whatever, right? And then hopefully you'll recognize that. Somebody, you tell that information, they'll recognize that location, they can find it. And things have been found that way. But usually when we're trying to find something, dowsing seems to work better. Are you familiar with the term dowsing?
Yeah, I'm pretty good with dowsing rods.
Okay. Well, then I suggest you do that. And it's pretty straightforward. You hold the intention of this, I presume it's an object, right?
Yes.
Okay. You hold this intention of this object in your mind and try and have it kind of pictured in your mind, and then allow the rods to lead you to where it is. And
do that.
It does work fairly. Have you tried that yet?
Oh yeah, I've dowsed before.
Yeah, but have you tried that for this?
Oh, not yet, because I don't have a set. I have to
borrow just get a couple coat hangers, metal coat hangers. Hold them by the long sides. They work just as well as L rods.
All right, I will do
or
that.
Or you can get some, go to Home Depot or Lowe's and get some really thin wire, rods, so they'll hold the shape, and just bend them at the same point in both of them and use those. I mean, it's easy to make field expedient dowsing rods. So let me tell you a story then about how something very similar to this worked out. So we had these friends. They've since passed on. They're older. They were the parents of a good friend of ours in Austin, and they lived in eastern Arizona, a little town called Eager, right over the New Mexico border. And every time we went from Austin back to Utah or Nevada, where all our relatives were, we'd drive through Eager and stop and stay over at their house. They had a very huge 5,000 square foot house up in the mountains. It's very pleasant, much more pleasant than Phoenix. And we'd stay there and spend a few days kind of relaxing. And so one time we're coming through, And the mom's name was Floyce, was her name. And we're in there, and she's saying, I walk in, and she's telling my wife this story. She says, I got the sale on these really nice teddy bears. I got one for every one of my great grandkids, and I put them in a box. I put them somewhere in the house. I can't find them. All of my kids have looked for them. I've looked for them. Dean, my husband's looked for them. Nobody's found them. We don't know where they are. And I'm hearing this, and I'm thinking, well, it'd really get us points if I were to find those teddy bears. And so I decided I'd douse for them. Now, if you have to picture this house, it had 3 floors.
Big house.
The bottom floor was a huge common area with these Murphy beds. It was for family reunions they had. And so, but it had 2 large storerooms and a garage, and they were all crammed with cardboard boxes. And she said these were in the cardboard box. The one storage room had 1, 2, 3 ranks of shelves with boxes on both sides, passageways in between, and then all around the perimeter of the room were more shelves with more boxes on them. There was another storage room that was very similarly arranged, and then there was the garage, which had a bunch of crap in it too. And so my first task was to figure out where in the house it was. And I started with the basement, which is where all these rooms were, because that seemed the most likely spot. And she kind of indicated she thought that's where it was. And so I doused which room they were in, and I picked the one, and it was, of course, the worst one, the one with all of the shelves and all the boxes. So I go in there, and I start dowsing, and I use what I call deviceless dowsing. So I don't have L rods. I just kind of put my hands together, and I point my fingers, and I go how it feels. So it's kind of like a tingling. When I'm going the right direction, I feel this kind of energetic sort of vibration. Hard to express exactly. And when I'm going away from it, it kind of goes away. And so I'm following this, and I decide, okay, so I feel like it's in here somewhere, but I'm having a hard time with that direction finding anything. So I'll just walk up and down the aisles and see if it gets stronger or weaker. And so I did that, and I come to this aisle, and I'm going down, and I kind of, and in a way, it's kind of like having a slope. I'm using an analogy here. It's like you get down the bottom when you're closest to it, and it starts to be harder to go up on either side. You feel like you're in the proximity of this thing. So far, am I making sense to you? Now you're non-communicative.
There we go.
There you go.
Mute.
Yeah.
Yes, 100%. Yes.
Okay, good. So I'm walking down this one aisle, and I get past a certain point, and then I feel like I'm going uphill, even though, of course, I'm not. And then I back off, and I feel like I'm going up there. So it must be here somewhere. And I kind of turn and face the shelf, and there's probably 8 or 10 different sized cardboard boxes, and the shelves all the way to the ceiling. And I go, I wonder what's in this box. There's nothing, no label on it or anything. And I grab it, and I pull it out, and I set it on the floor, and I open up, and there are 14 teddy bears in there. And so I think, oh, this is going to be good. And so I close the top again, and I walk upstairs with this box, and Foyce is still talking about these teddy bears, and she doesn't see me coming. And as I get closer, then I come into the corner of her vision, and she turns and she sees me. She sees this box, and her mouth drops, and she says, "Is that?" And I dump them all out on her lap. And she was totally ecstatic. From then on, we could have stayed there the whole year, and she would have been happy to have us there. But that was pretty remarkable. I mean, I've done a lot of things like that in the past. When I dowse, had some success with diagram dowsing and map dowsing, but I've had the most success physically doing it. But that was probably my most spectacular success, and it was a lot of fun.
That would have been fun. Yeah. All right, let's get to some audience questions, because there's literally a ton of them for you. Let's start off with Mark here, who is asking, what type of metal is best to use when it comes to making dowsing rods?
Something that's relatively easy to bend. I mean, you could use anything. I don't believe that it's the material that makes a difference. I think it's an intentional thing. I think it's really ESP of a sort that's happening. But usually brass, and that's what you'll find, of course, often in home improvement stores, the thin rods of brass that are easy to cut and they're easy to bend. And that's what I'd recommend just because of practical purposes.
All right, let's move on here. Let's go to the Andromedan. Paul, have you ever time traveled in the Stargate program?
So that's an interesting question. So I don't know if you guys, you've probably heard of Bill Burns. You know who Bill Burns is?
Yes.
Yeah. So Bill Burns, of course, he's been on some of these ancient alien shows. I don't remember which one it was, but and other things as well. And he used to be editor of UFO magazine, and he and George Noory were working together. And when my first book was published, George agreed to write a book blurb on the jacket for me, and Bill, I think we had talked before that. He knew me, but that kind of got us going. And he published a number of articles I wrote about UFOs and remote viewing in UFO magazine. But he wrote a little kind of a sidebar for it. And he said something along the lines, and I can't remember exactly the phraseology. I'd have to look it up. He said he called me a time traveler. He said, and essentially there's some truth to that. You don't physically go anywhere, but your mind can, in fact, transcend time. We've got plenty of evidence for that. Double-blind, well constructed studies that show remote viewers accessing past data. Okay, data from the past.
Do you want to continue with that, or do you want another question?
Well, let me finish real quick. And so, yes, the answer to that is yes, in that sense, and where I was able to mentally access the past. I did have a cool story about that, but we should answer more questions.
All right, let's get to another one here. Let's go to Linda. Can you remote view the past?
I think I just answered that.
Yeah.
Well, maybe this is the time for the story. I don't know. It's up to you.
Yeah, just tell the story. What the heck?
So, for about a year, a little more than a year, the Defense Intelligence Agency, DIA, remote viewing program, which at the time was called Sunstreak, and later was called Stargate. It's called Sunstreak. We were detailed to the Army, back to the Army, and to the Joint Task Forces to help with the war on drugs. Okay, so I was at Key West. We were working out of Key West, and the operations officer is Army Major for the Joint Task Force. He was dubious about remote viewing. He didn't really think it was real, particularly, or he didn't think it wasn't real, but he didn't trust it. Right? He'd not seen any convincing evidence. So one time he gets me over into the room where we were using a remote view with, and I'm thinking he's going to run me on a target or something. He said, "Look, I need some reassurance that this really works. And you tell me it works doesn't do me any good." He said, "I need to see it done." He said, "I have a target that I've designated. I've written down on a piece of paper, folded it over half a dozen times, stuck it in this pocket." And I did that. He did that before I was ever around and even knew this was going to happen. He said, "I stuck it in there, and I want to see what you do, if you can do it." I'm going, "Oh crap. There's a lot riding on this, right? If I blow it," which you do. No remote viewer is 100% successful. I'm thinking, what happens if this is one I blow? This guy's going to lose confidence. So, well, I have to do it. So I sat down and I started going through the process. And I'll cut to the chase here. I started perceiving rolling hills, grassy rolling hills with fog, kind of early morning. There's a lot of dew on the ground. And there's all these people running around with kind of short skirts on, sort of, and edged weapons, and they're fighting each other. And I'm describing this thing, and this is a weird target. I know I've blown it. And he says, "Okay, you can stop there. I believe you now." I said, "Well, what?" I was sure, I really was. I was sure I was off because it was so improbable, right? He pulls out the piece of paper, hands it to me. I unfold it. And his target was the Battle of Hastings, 1066. And I had just described the Battle of Hastings, essentially in very experiential terms. And that even kind of surprised me, kind of impressed me. And he was on board the whole rest of the time we were associated with him. So yeah, I mean, 1066, that was what, 1,000 years before I did the session. So yes, you can remote view the past.
Awesome. Let's move on let's go to Paramarv. Avoiding any topic that's classified. What's the biggest shocker that you learned while using remote viewing?
Well, let's see. Let me tell you a sidebar story that kind of tells you why I have a hard time answering this. So I'm in the offices there, our headquarters building, and I'm walking down the middle of the room that we were in, and the other way comes our commander, Bill Ray, a really good friend of mine. He's wearing his shooting jacket, one of those tweed coats with the patches on the elbows and all that stuff, puffing on his pipe. This is before you couldn't smoke in government buildings, looking very thoughtful. And he stops me. He says, "Paul, you know what amazes me about this remote viewing stuff?" I said, "No, Bill, what?" And he says, "What amazes me about this remote viewing stuff is that it doesn't amaze me anymore." And I thought about it. I said, "You're right, Bill." And so when you say shocking, I don't think anything could shock me with remote viewing anymore. But I think maybe one of the most surprising, or at least the most gratifying things, was when I remote viewed, totally blind to this, an attack on a U.S. warship that wasn't going to happen for 50 hours. Nobody knew this. It was kind of, we called them what do we call it? I can't think of what, a directed search. And the idea was the tasking was look into the future and see what out there is something that we need to know about that's going to be critical to know about. And I didn't know it was a directed search. All I got was my 8675309 numbers, right? And so I start remote viewing, and I pick up on this attack on a warship, the surprise attack on a warship in a closed body of water late at night and all that. And I'm not going to go through the whole detail because I want to get to another question. But the guy who was working with me on that had expected something else. He said, "Oh, we're going to we'll just stop there. We'll go home for the weekend. And, you were off, but that's all right. Everybody's off every now and again." Okay. So I go home. Monday morning, Skip Atwater calls me on the phone. He says, "Hey, Paul, where's that session you did on Friday?" And I said, "Well, it's in my safe. Why do you care? I was off." He said, "You haven't seen the papers this morning, have you?" And so I opened up my copy of the Washington Post. Headline, U.S., I don't remember exactly what it said, but U.S. frigate hit by Exocet missiles fired by an Iraqi jet. It was the USS Stark, which was really literally ambushed and attacked by an Iraqi jet firing Exocet missiles, almost sunk. 37 sailors died. And when I was able to compare the after-action report the Navy published about this with my remote viewing session, my session was 100% correct. I never had that good of a remote viewing session before or since. 100% correct, including some details I thought I had gotten wrong because it wasn't in the media reports about it, but it was in the Navy after-action report. That was astonishing. It still is kind of astonishing even to me today, even after I've revisited numerous times. And that was evidence, absolute evidence that remote viewing really does work to me, because there was no way anybody could know about that at the time I did the session. Absolutely none. And yet it was 100% correct.
Let's go over to X for Raz here. The psychic viewing programs, are they still continuing behind closed doors? Probably have hands-on NHI teachers?
Well, I'll answer that last part first. Absolutely certain that if there is a program, there are no NHI involved. And I'll tell you why. Well, I probably don't tell you why because that'll take longer, but I'll give you a really quick soundbite. My mentor, Ingo Swann, the one who created remote viewing and taught me and my colleagues how to remote view, was very much involved and interested in ETs, and particularly the consciousness elements that are involved in ET experiences and stuff. His belief was that the ETs are actually afraid of human ESP potential. They feel that we have more capability than they do, and they're doing their best to suppress our capacity for that. And there's a whole lot more to say about that. Is that true? I don't know. But if I'm inclined to at least think that's a possibility, and I seriously doubt that we do have any NHIs involved in any kind of training. Now, about the program, I am certain that the military services are no longer doing remote viewing. That I would stake my life on. Don't have any formal remote viewing programs. I'm pretty convinced that the CIA does not either, even though everybody thinks they do. I don't think they do, because I know, because Hal Putoff and I were approached by I'm going to get this position wrong, but it's close. Assistant Deputy Director for the CIA, and asked what it would take to create a remote viewing program. This was about 10 years after the CIA had shut down the program before. So the fact that they were inquiring about this tells me they did not have a program at that time, or they wouldn't have bothered to ask us. They already had one. They had one. They wouldn't ask us. And I know that this deputy assistant director, whatever, assistant deputy director, whatever I said, this person went back and tried to get a program started, and talked to us back channel and said, I failed. They shut me down instantly. And that does not surprise me, because the CIA didn't really want the program. In fact, at the time they were trying to move the program into the CIA, Congress had actually mandated the DIA give it up and give it to the CIA. The CIA was led by, I want to say his name is Robert Deutsch. I think his name is Robert. And he had a history of shutting down anybody who tried to talk remote viewing. He hated it. He didn't want to have anything to do with it. He was I think, nuclear physicist by training or something like that. Total physicalist, total materialist, did not at all want to believe that remote viewing existed. And he was in charge of the agency. At the time, they were trying to pass, Congress was trying to pass it on to the CIA. So they absolutely did shut it down, because I knew everybody in the program at the time. And they were all farmed out, sent away. The program was shut down. An interesting thing about this is the CIA then they claimed that they had done a study to show that remote viewing didn't work. And what they didn't say was they shut the program down first, and then they commissioned that study. The study didn't start until a month after they had shut the program down. And the data was clearly cooked. They wanted, because Congress wanted them to run the program. There were at least six quite powerful senators who were very much committed to keeping the remote viewing program going. One was John Glenn, one was Bill Cohen, one was Inouye, I can't remember his first name. Rudman was one of them. Stevens from Alaska was another one, and the sixth one was Claiborne Pell from Rhode Island. All of those guys were on board making this program run. And so the CIA couldn't just arbitrarily cancel the program. They had to come up with some kind of justification. So they created this report that found, it was of no use. I won't go into more detail. I'm already way over on this one. But I know the CIA, the military services, don't have a program. The one that might is NSA. And I don't know it for sure, but they did have one at the time. They did have a program at the same time we were learning remote viewing, and I've seen nowhere they canceled it. And a whistleblower back about 2012 alleged that they still had a program running. So it might be one there. I don't know.
Well, all our audience members are going to have to wait until next time to get their questions in for you. But for now, we have to say goodnight to you, Dr. Paul H. Smith. We're going to bring you back in a couple of weeks.
Okay.
To continue this conversation, because we just ran out of time.
Okay.
It's rare that happens, but we ran out of time. But anybody who had a question, repost it next week. Remember it, or 2 weeks from now, we'll get it to Dr. Paul H. Smith. Rviewer.com is his website, the letter R, viewer.com. Swamp Dweller and Little Timmy James are next on Spaced Out Radio. Stay tuned, everybody.
You're listening to Spaced Out Radio with your host, Dave Scott.
That went by way too fast.
Or I talk too much, one or the other.
Oh, man. Well, we'll bring you back in 13 days. We'll get everybody else's questions in, and we'll make it completely different than what we did tonight.
Well, we could do that. And I don't know if I saw somebody suggest I come back every month or something. That might be too much for you, but we could even do a whole Q&A period if you want to do that.
Yeah, let's do that next time you're on. We'll do straight Q&A.
Okay.
All right.
Now, let me say, I used to kind of hold the UFO thing, UAP-ET thing at arm's length. I have now been kind of dragged kicking and screaming into that material. So I do have quite a bit to say about that too.
Good.
So
welcome to the world of woo, man.
Yeah. So, all right.
All right, buddy. We'll talk to you in a couple of weeks.
You betcha. Thank you. And I just, how do I get out of this? Or are you going to shut me out?
I'll take you out.
Okay. Thank you.
Good night, Doc. Yeah. Dr. Paul H. Smith. How awesome is he? Can't wait for 2 weeks' time. I'll be right back, everybody. All right. Oh, there's little Timmy James. Oh, let's give him a wave. Thank you tonight to Human Carl, Major Lee, Deborah Rooney, and Cosmic Joe for the great super chats. If you're new and around here, please hit subscribe, ring that bell, because we are all wanting to grow. Yeah, we do. It's fun. Don't forget to shop at our Spaced Out Radio store. We do not have ugly swag, people. No ugly swag, so make sure you check it on out. Especially if you want to realize it doesn't have to hurt. SOR Alien Lube t-shirt right there. Doesn't have to hurt. Hi, beautiful Juliana. How are you? Here we go. Here we go with the third and final hour of Spaced Out Radio tonight. Good to have you with us. My name is Dave Scott. Very much appreciate earning your listening ears wherever you are on this beautiful planet we call Earth. Hello to everyone listening in on our terrestrial affiliates around North America, digitally on every major podcast network. Our website, spacedoutradio.com, we have a plethora of features for you. Rock out to Bumblefoot, read the news wire, check out our swag as well. You can follow us on X at Spaced Out Radio, Instagram at Spaced Out Radio Show, and on Patreon in the Space Travelers Club. The Desert Clam has set the password for tonight in the SOR Space Travelers Club. Posiliquent. Posiliquent is your password. Use it wisely, Space Travelers, as the Clam sets the password each and every night right here on Spaced Out Radio. Let's head to the swamp.
Hello and welcome to Spaced Out Radio's Swamp. I'm Swamp Dweller, and tonight I'm going to take you on a mystic journey of the unknown, sharing tales of monsters, legends, and nightmares. Welcome to the Spaced Out Radio Swamp. There's this river near a quiet part of town. The water's calm, and you can drive on top of it in the winter. I go there when my mind runs and I can't find the quiet anymore. One night was different though. This night, I was alone at the river post breakdown and was lying in the backseat of my car. My friends and I fought over something I honestly don't care about anymore months later. I sat and stared into nothing. In seconds, all the cars around me in the parking lot had left. No warning or noise. They were just gone. I sat up and looked around. The smell from outside was almost painful, sour, and chemical. Like that smell you'd get in high school chemistry when you didn't listen to your teacher and put your nose in the beaker. I looked at the once clear water, which had turned rusted and wasted. The cars had somehow gotten across the river to the forest, and all the people stood there staring at me. They didn't move. They barely even breathed. They just stood there. I didn't leave my car, too afraid at this point, but I did try to turn it on and leave. It was stalling repeatedly. I went to start it. I had gotten the check engine light of my car. In a panic, I checked out my info chart and saw what was wrong because I didn't trust the outside. Nothing. No flat tire, no issues with my battery, not even an oil change. Surprisingly, I reached in the back of my car for my phone, and it was working. Message after message started sending. All unknown numbers, all telling me repeatedly that I need to get out. I looked out my window again and jumped back. All the people were now standing in a circle around my car with phones in hand. I realized I had been crying at this point and rapidly tried to start my car. It took me 5 minutes before I gave up and crawled into my back seat sobbing. I'm not sure how long I was back there, but I noticed the smell was gone and heard people talking outside my car. I sat up and saw all the same people in their cars. The water was evident again. I have no idea how to explain this experience. I still go there, but not at night. I'm still unsure what happened, if it even happened. But knowing me, It probably didn't, and I probably entered some sort of psychosis. But it was still terrifying. I haven't told anyone before now, because I don't want people to judge me. Like I said, I don't know what happened. I don't know if anyone else has had to deal with this, and deep down, I crave knowledge. Hopefully, somebody listening to this might have an idea of what I experienced out there.
Thank you to Swamp Dweller for a shorty but a goodie. If you want more just like that, head on over to his YouTube channel, Swamp Dweller. Hit subscribe, ring that bell, and of course, you can hear thousands of stories just like that for your entertainment. Time for the UFO report.
That is an interplanetary flying space saucer. You have made me very angry. Very angry indeed.
All right, little Timmy James has returned for the UFO report. I almost didn't come to you tonight. I wanted Paul to stay for another hour, and no offense, I would have booted you. I would have.
Yeah, no, I would have let you.
God, that was
it was very good.
Yeah, it was very good.
Not very often that you run out of time, though.
I know, and there were like 20 more questions from our audience that I wanted to ask too.
Mm-hmm.
They'll have to wait. 2 weeks.
Yeah.
We'll bring them back. You know, it's funny because I have this rule that if I bring a guest on, I usually will not bring them back on for a minimum of 6 to 8 months.
Okay. Yeah.
But with somebody like him, you got to break the rules sometimes.
Yeah, no doubt.
You totally have to break the rules sometimes. So I'm breaking the rules for him. Totally breaking the rules.
Nice.
Have to. Have to. I got a bunch of SOR swag today.
Yeah,
I did.
I see the shirt. What else did you get?
I got 3 more shirts and a hoodie.
Oh, a hoodie.
Yeah.
Which one?
I got a bright green SOR, our other owl logo, where it's just like the side profile face of the owl. Yeah.
Yeah, that's cool.
Really nice. Looks great on the green.
Nice.
Yeah.
Pretty
happy about that. How's your day?
Very, very good. I'm glad to be done running on fumes, but it was good. It was busy and good.
Oh, like I have any sympathy for you running on fumes.
Yeah. Well, I'm older than you.
This is true by about 25 years.
That's right. That's old guys. We need a rest.
Right? What do you got for us tonight, Tim?
Well, I was scrolling through some stuff today, obviously, and I stumbled across, obviously just going, and I stumbled across, looked like President-elect Trump was having a bit of a luncheon or whatever down at Mar-a-Lago, and he had a bunch of his governors and stuff down there. But what was really interesting is this is a bit of a two-sided story, so I'm going to get into it. Trump goes on, and I'll read it. But at the end of this one, I'll bring it up and you'll see what I'm talking about. So it started off, and this is all just like kind of quotes coming out of his video. So I guess he was asked about the drones, right? And he said, I'm going to give you a report on drones about 1 day into the administration, because I think it's ridiculous that they're not telling you about what's going on with the drones. And it's not only with me. So Glenn Youngkin was telling me today, he's the the governor of Virginia, that they have drones all over the place too, and nobody's reporting it. So I don't know why they're not reporting it. Do you have anything that you'd like to say, Glenn? So he goes, yeah, just one quick comment, which is we are home to the largest naval base in the world, and at Quantico, we house a lot of the SEAL teams and have huge national security infrastructure. And now, for 2 years running, we have had drone incursions over secure airspace, and we still don't know why. And I think that's absolutely unacceptable. And I think President Trump and the new leadership coming in, I think, will work diligently to understand who's behind this and what we do in order to stop the digital surveillance of all of our secure infrastructure. So then Jeff Landry pipes up, and he's the governor of New Orleans or Louisiana. He says, well, I can tell you that while we were dealing with terrorist attacks in New Orleans, we had drones being thrown over or flown, I guess that's supposed to be, over our nuclear reactors in Louisiana. And we brought that attention to the FAA. We've been asking the FAA to give these states the ability to mitigate these drones, and it's sitting on some bureaucrat's desk. And that's real. Nobody knows. They don't want to talk about it. So then Governor Gordon from Wyoming pipes in. He says, I'm just going to say we have drones in Wyoming flying over our infrastructure as well. And it's incredibly frustrating that we not only have no way of knowing what it is, but nobody knows how to deal with them. They don't want to talk about it, and nobody knows why they don't want to talk about it. So Trump jumps back in and said, that could be us sending drones. I hope that's the case, us doing it and doing research, and maybe they don't want to talk about it from that standpoint. I hope it's not an enemy, but we're going to find out on the 21st, the day after. But you got to give me a little time for the inauguration. But shortly thereafter, we'll give you a report on it. We'll tell you exactly what it is they know. And it's very strange that they aren't talking about it. So, okay, so they did their roundtable, and it was a presser, and obviously there was a bunch of cameras and stuff there. So I finished reading that. I said, okay, interesting. And right below it, Grant Cameron pops up. And right. So Grant Cameron goes, those looking for UFO disclosure under the Trump administration should read the following 3 emails from one of Trump's gatekeepers to physicist Dr. Jack Safadi. So Jack is an American theoretical physicist working largely outside academia. Most of Safadi's publications revolve around quantum physics and consciousness. So I'm guessing the doctor has been sending emails to the administration. So the first email came out, and it was from Ronald Pandolfi, who is, I guess, the gatekeeper. And he's talking to Jack. He goes, hey, Jack, President Trump is opposed to fake news, and your redistribution of fake news has caused you to be placed in a category that we block your access to the new admin. Focus on science, not the delusions of the insane or parlor tricks of crooks. So that was at 10 a.m. in the morning. So then he sends another one. And he says, hang on a second, I've got it here somewhere. And he says, basically, that now he's been banned from anything. And the Trump administration, in this email, he says, drones aren't real. He goes, so therefore, don't send us anything else. We don't want to hear from you again. We appreciate what you've done for science, and that's the last we want to hear from you. You've been banned from all our email sources to the White House and to the administration. So I'm like, So we've got somebody saying, I'm going to release it, and we're going to figure out what this is. Give me a day after the inauguration. And then down a little bit, there's emails coming from his administration or his gatekeeper in the administration saying it's all baloney and there's no such thing as drones. And yeah, we don't want to hear from you. So what are we doing?
There we go. Sorry about that. That's twice I've done that tonight. Grant Cameron and Ron Pandolfi have been having it out for a while.
Yeah.
And the funny part about it is Pandolfi will not, under any circumstance, block Grant.
Right.
He loves torturing Grant, and Grant, in a good Canadian way, just kind of lets it bounce off his skin and fires back another question. Now, this has been going on for years. There's a lot of mystique about Ron Pandolfi, including the fact that many people believe that he can open up portals within his house, and that his wife may be a hybrid alien from another planet.
Really?
It sounds way, way out to lunch, man.
Mm-hmm.
But there are people who Grant has talked to and Nicole Sackage has talked to who absolutely believe this is true.
Huh.
And that his daughter is also a hybrid. They have one daughter. And Pandolfi, who is, very close to the actual weird desk, which many people believe, people watch him like a hawk.
Oh, okay.
He is, so for people out there who want to actually take a look at it, watch Ron Pandolfi on Facebook or just Google who he is. Like as Human Carl says, this is way beyond peak woo. Way beyond peak woo. And Jack Sarfati, which is really interesting, I actually got an email out of the blue from him on New Year's Day.
Nice.
And he never tags me in an email, but this time he did. I gotta try and get him on the show. I know he wants to come on. We've just never lined up a time. I'm gonna try and get him on the show because number one, the dude's a legend.
Right.
He is. A lot of people think he is whacked out further than Grant Cameron is. But we're gonna see what we can do to get that going. But yeah, that feud between Pandolfi and Grant Cameron is absolutely hilarious. Absolutely hilarious because they just go at it.
That's awesome.
Oh, it's great. The gloves are always off, to take a hockey term, right?
Perfect. Right on.
What else you got?
Well, I've got, again, as I always end, this month or this week, whatever, in UFO history. So this happened 1948 January. So Captain Thomas Mantle, a 25-year-old Kentucky Air National Guard pilot, and 3 others are flying F-51D fighters to Louisville, Kentucky. After Mantell reports his position to Standiford Field in Louisville, Tech Sergeant Quentin Blackwell at Godman Army Airfield breaks in over the radio to request Mantell to intercept an unidentifiable object. The object maintains a constant angular position as seen from Godman, as it apparently moves away at about 240 to 300 miles an hour at an altitude of 50,000 to 60,000 feet during most of Mantell's pursuit. Flying at 300 miles an hour and gradually climbing to about between 22 and 23,000 feet, Mantell gradually overtakes the UFO from below. Passing Bowling Green, Kentucky at about 3:10 p.m. in one of his last radio reports, Mantell says the UFO appears to be a metallic object or possibly a reflection of sun from a metallic object, and it is tremendous size. At 3:15 p.m. at 22,500 feet, with oxygen running low, 2 other F-51Ds quit the chase. Mantell continues to 25,000, blacks out, and crashes at 3:18 p.m., about 4 miles southwest of Franklin, Kentucky. The UFO disappears from view behind a cloud at Godman at 3:50 p.m. The project science staff, still not yet formally organized, are under pressure to come up with some kind of an answer, so they quickly float Venus, offhandedly suggested by Ohio State University astronomer Alan Hynek, as an explanation. This implausible explanation is not even believed by the Air Force, but it remains unchallenged for several years. In 1952, Rappelt reopens the case and identifies the object as a secret skyhook balloon, although he cannot confirm a launch that day. Army veteran Clifford Stone finds later that there have been no skyhook launches since late December. However, Barry J. Greenwood and Robert Todd tentatively identify the balloon as one launched from Camp Ripley near Little Falls, Minnesota on January 6th.
Wow.
And they lose a pilot. And it's like, yeah, no, it was a weather balloon. I don't get it.
Venus. It's always Venus.
Exactly, right? So, yeah. Oh, interesting story. Something else. I'm just curious. Did you see, I can't remember his name, governor that said, hey, I guess they're putting together the UAP program for the new administration coming in, and
Right.
he wants to hire Grush and Elizondo,
I did see that.
right?
I did see that. You know
I'm like,
what? It would, and I've been actually thinking about that. If David Grush and Lou Elizondo got hired by this new program,
mhm,
number one, they would regain their secrecy or their
yeah,
top secret clearance. You
mhm,
know,
yeah, yeah, yeah. It would
but
be a little. I read it and I was like, okay, pipe dreams, but you just never know because I mean, Lou's always said if he was called back, he'd throw his boots on, and I don't know necessarily know if that just means strictly combat, but if they called him back, he said he'd go. So you never know. Maybe his podcast is.
I mean, here's the thing though, that's going to pull him right out.
Yeah.
He's going to be him and David Grush would probably be locked right back in
Mm-hmm.
on not being able to say a thing.
Yeah, for
Disappear
sure.
from the public eye.
Yeah.
There's no way that they would be able to come back.
No, I think that'd be the end of the two of them, not in a unliving sort of way, but yeah, I think they'd get muzzled and they just get buried back into the industrial cycle of it all, right?
And I don't know if that would be a good thing.
Mm-mm.
I mean, it would be great for Grush as well as Elizondo because it would give them increased credibility. You know, especially with Elizondo and his book and everything that happened with the ULP,
Yeah.
the unidentified lighting phenomena.
Yeah.
That would be something that literally would give them credibility to come back and say, I told you so.
Yeah.
To a lot of people, including a lot of their harshest critics like Stephen Greenstreet from the New York Post.
Mm-hmm.
But
Mm-hmm.
on the flip side, I think, you know, for every head, there's a tail.
Yeah.
And the tail side would be, I don't think they would be very public. Elizondo obviously has been way more public over time than David Grush has.
For sure.
But I wonder how David Grush's handlers would be able to take that. You know, it's very, very interesting to see how that would play out. But that is something that we're definitely going to have to monitor because if they do end up going back in, what does that say for the UFO program? And will they then be shut down, or would it be a coordinated effort to bring more transparency? There's that T word again.
Yep.
Transparency to the topic at hand. Your thoughts?
Exactly. I think of the same thing you were, and it's 6-1, half dozen of the other. Like they're either it's going to become the curtain's going to come open, or they're just going to bring them in, and that's it. The ball's going to stop rolling from those two. And like you said, Gresh, not so much. He hasn't been doing a ton, but Elizondo, I think everything would just hit a brick wall. That's the way I'm looking at it. I think if they could bring them in and do that, I don't know about the transparency part. I think it'd be conflicting for the two of them that'd be a big decision for the two of them to make if that was the case and they were invited back.
I don't know how that would break down. I mean,
Yeah, right?
But would that shut down other whistleblowers from coming forward?
Yeah.
That's the thing that we would have to see because they've been pushing for it.
Yeah. That's true. That's true. And I know we're just about out of time, but just wanted to mention, did you see 106 committees from the Pentagon were brought in for read-ins for the new administration, except for Arrow?
Yeah. Well, go figure. Arrow is a bust.
Yeah. Left on the back burner.
Arrow is a complete bust. And you know what? They're just going to have to deal with that as it comes along. Little Timmy James, it is always great to have you on the show. We're saying goodnight to you. Talk to you this weekend. Dave 101 coming up next.
This is Spaced Out Radio and your host, Dave Scott.
All right, little Timmy James.
All right, little Davy Scott.
Oh, man. All right, there we go. Now I can work back to normal here. My screen jumped over again.
Oh, no doubt. All
Hate
right,
it.
my friend. You have a good evening and enjoy. Get off my lawn.
Yeah, I'll figure something to talk about here soon.
Yeah. And we'll see Joe Monk tomorrow night.
All right.
All
Oops,
right, man.
Joe's screen.
Have a good night, everybody.
All right, buddy. Take care.
See you later.
All right, let's go here. And let's see here. Let's see. That looks like a fun one. Go here. I'm looking. Just give me a minute. Do I have a minute? Yeah, I got a minute. All right, there we go. Insult Canada all you want. You're 0-2 against us. Oh, Diablo sauce is good. Oh, I hate it when this freaking happens. So frustrating. Everything jumps over to the one side. Thank you, Dead Man, Human Carl, Major Lee, Deborah Rooney, and Cosmic Joe for the great super chats tonight. Greatly appreciate the love. And there it jumps back again. I got to reset everything. Drives me nuts. Drives me nuts. Oh and 2, Dead Man. 0-2. Dead Man's first name is Owen. His last name is 2. Lex Diaz, how you doing? 20 seconds, everybody. More like 27 seconds. Thanks, Phyllis. Here we go. Here we go with the final half hour of Spaced Out Radio tonight. My name is Dave Scott. Thank you very much for joining us wherever you are on this beautiful planet we call Earth. Reminder to all of you that if you missed most of this show or others, always check out our free archives by going to YouTube or any major podcast network. Our website, spacedoutradio.com, we have a plethora of features for you. Rock out to Bumblefoot, read the news wire, check out our swag as well. Follow us on X at Spaced Out Radio, Instagram at Spaced Out Radio Show, and on Patreon in the Space Travelers Club. It's that time of the week, that time of the night, where you yell at everybody to get off my lawn. It's a Dave 101.
Open up the door, it's Dave! Who? Dave, D-A-V-E! What is this?
Dave not here!
It's the Dave 101.
I can see you're really upset about this. I honestly think you ought to sit down calmly, take a stress pill, and think things over.
Dave the killer! Yeah! Dave the killer!
Dave's a mess.
Where did all the UFOs go? Seriously. Where'd they all go? UFOs to UAP, now to drones. I just want to know, where did all the UFOs go? Now, apparently they're flying out there somewhere, but nobody seems to see them because everybody wants drones out there and wants to be a part of the drone kick that's going on through late 2024 and now into 2025. So, where did the drones go? Where did the UFOs go? Where did the UAPs go? Now, the big thing that I'm wondering is, I think everybody is starting to think that these drones are all human initiated, human technology over New Jersey, Virginia, into the Midwest and out to the West as well. Heck, we even have people claiming that there are drones coming out of the ocean to check out the major fires going on right now in California. Everybody's seeing drones. Is it the new fancy way of trying to cover up UFOs? So let's put on our tinfoil hat here for a second and actually think about that. What better way to hide technology or the UFO issue than by claiming it's all human drones? Now, this may sound like a boring topic. You guys are probably sick and tired, just like I am, of talking about these drones. And trust me, I am absolutely sick of it. Absolutely sick of it. Tired of the talking about it. I've been tired literally since like week 2 of this. Big drones, small drones, little drones, bus-sized drones. One shaped like the Taco Bell Chihuahua. I don't know. But we're not moving the UFO world very fast. And by the way, during this time when the drones have taken over, how come we're not hearing any talk about abductions? Where did all the abductions go? Who's got aliens out there? Nobody seems to have aliens anymore. Yes, people will talk about them. People will discuss their experiences. But realistically, I at least know on my Facebook chat line, or timeline, pardon me, that nobody seems to be talking about alien abductions. Did the aliens just stop taking people? All because of these drones? We've heard so many excuses about these drones over the last few weeks. We really don't know about what they're actually doing. We could stop droning on about drones, as Human Carl likes to say in our chat room. And I know his hair is on fire right now, pun intended, because I'm talking about this. But that's okay. We love him. Human Carl's a good guy. It's not Alien Carl. He's Human Carl. But how do we get back to actually looking for UFOs? We know that a lot of these man-made technologies are being seen. Maybe they're being tested. Maybe they're testing us. Where are they coming from? Donald Trump says when he's in power, he's going to let people know. He says the current government already knows what they are, where they are coming from. And that doesn't very sound like outer space now, does it? So where are the UFOs and where are the aliens? Maybe it's because it's winter, people are cold, people are tired of the snow, in most parts of North America at least, where they're not going outside taking a look to find them aliens. But it's usually around this time of year when alien abductions actually go up because people are home more. People are paying less attention. They're trying to cozy on down, ready for the spring and summer to arrive in just a couple of months. Most of my abductions happen in the fall and winter. I know others who are abducted have had that happen all around themselves like that as well. But the question that I have for each and every one of you that I would like you to ponder is this drone phenomena that we're seeing going to take away from people believing that UFOs actually exist and extraterrestrials are actually visiting this planet? Now, if you're an experiencer, you obviously know the answer to that. The answer is we already know the aliens are here. We already know the UFOs are here flying around. But for those who have jumped on the drone bandwagon trying to figure out what these things are, well, the story is almost past its due date. It's like a jug of milk these days, where once it gets past its best before, it's gone forever and people will forget about it. And then they will no longer be looking in the sky because maybe, just maybe, they'll think, that's not UFOs, that's human technology that is flying out there. So I don't need to pay attention to that zigzagging in the sky. No, why do that when I already know it's man-made? This is why I don't care for the term UAP. Because man-made objects are there to confuse us with UFOs. It's a great equalizer in denying the phenomena. It very much is. You can now throw drones in there as well. I'm trying to figure out how many times I can say drones during this rant that I'm having, but I'm wondering if this is all part of a program out of the Pentagon to try and cover this up more. Look, we've known since 2023 they have wanted to sweep this topic right back under the rug. They didn't want to deal with David Grush. They didn't want to deal with Lou Elizondo, Jay Stratton, James Lukatsky, and many others. They're tired of it. They were done with the topic. And I think that's why Bill Nelson, the head of NASA, actually came out and stated that he knew nothing of it. NASA has nothing, no records whatsoever of anything UFO. I'll tell you, that'll be shocking because it could put people like Ryan Graves and others who are pushing the threat narrative out of business. And maybe that's what they want. When you convince the public that something is good, something is bad, something exists, or something doesn't, the public, like sheep, usually follow. And maybe that's what we see with this drone technology, is once the public realizes that this topic is human-made, and if Trump comes out on January 20th, 21st, 22nd, whenever, and says that these drones are human-made and they are American technology, well, guess what? we are going to see way fewer UFO slash UAP slash drone videos going online. It's true. So we have to wait and see. We have to twiddle our thumbs and wait for something to come through. We have no choice. It's just the way it is. And of course, the UFO public gets screwed on this. Why wouldn't we get screwed on this? Because we're the ones who want to know. We are the ones who got all excited that we were finally getting into the headline news, albeit on News Nation, but we are finally getting into the headline news. And now it's all drones. Yes, I am tired of it. I want aliens back. I want UFOs back. I want people being abducted and coming out and telling us their story, not of something that happened 2, 3, 4, 10, 12, 20 years ago. I want something fresh and new and exciting. How do we get there? Well, them aliens got to start taking people again. They're getting a little boring, unless they've already got all the DNA they need. No, I don't think there's any drones in our chat room either. And look, I feel sorry for the people who have been witnessing this or, seeing them over top of their houses or whatever it may be. I feel for them. They deserve answers, just like everybody deserves answers to their questions. Why is this being covered up so tightly? We don't know. We can assume. There's a lot of assumptions out there. But people are not getting their answers. People are getting a little bit anxious about it. People were shooting their guns in the air, trying to bring these things down. And here we are. We're just trying to find out the answers. So hopefully, just hopefully, when the administration changes over, whether you love the Donald or you don't, an answer would be nice. That's one thing I think we can all agree on. An answer what these drones are would be very nice. And hopefully he follows up on his word on that one and doesn't follow on others like making Canada the 51st state, invading Panama, invading Greenland. We don't want that. Nobody needs that. Besides, we're 0-2, or you're 0-2. Depends on where you live. So let's try and put the drones back in our back pocket. Get them away. Because I'm tired of it. I know you're tired of it. And if we're all that's just tired about it, let's try and get back to the UFO phenomena. It's much more fun. It's much more entertaining. We all want the stories. We're tired of the conspiracies. Let's just make it happen. Let's get to your news.
As God is my witness, I thought turkeys could fly.
Ladies and gentlemen, here is the latest bulletin from the Intercontinental Radio News.
Loud noises! I am good at things. Fighting and reading the news.
It's time once again for Spaced Out Radio's Weird News of the Week.
Oh, man, where do we start? You know how people say dreams can become reality? And yet for most of us, we go to bed, I want that Lamborghini. I want the lottery numbers. I want a new puppy. I want my boss to lay off. I want a raise at work. Whatever it may be. Well, a Maryland woman who won $50,000 from a Pick 5 lottery drawing said her set of winning numbers came to her in a dream. The Prince George's County woman told Maryland lottery officials she had a dream in December about a series of numbers that stuck in her head after she woke up. The woman ended up using the digits 99000 to buy a Pick 5 ticket from the Zip-In Mart in Oxon Hill. We were running late, and I almost forgot to play, the player said, but I knew we just had to play those numbers from my dream. The numbers scored the woman a $50,000 prize in the December 20th evening drawing. My wife showed me, but it didn't seem real, the winner's husband said. But when the Midas touch comes, hopefully you're on it, and thankfully we were. The couple said that they are weighing their options for the prize money. Why wouldn't they? 50 grand's a lot of money. Whatever she wants, the husband said, but we already gave the grandkids something extra for Christmas. Good for them. You know what sucks about being in the U.S.? You guys get taxed on that. In Canada, we do not get taxed on lottery winnings. So if you won like $80 million, you get $80 million. Tax-free. Tax-free. So out of that 50 grand, they probably got to pay about 16, 17,000 in taxes. Hopefully she gets a car or something. Yeah, hopefully. Let's move on. This one will make you cringe a little bit. A woman was left in agonizing pain after she decided to do something silly and wear a sex toy while undergoing an MRI scan. If you're crossing your legs and wincing, yeah, you're not alone. The unfortunate patient broke one of the main rules of having an MRI, and that is inserting something into herself. An MRI scanner is essentially a giant magnet that uses radio waves to generate an image. The downside of this is that it means that anything containing metal, like an unwired bra or coins in your pocket, must be removed before entering it. To put it in perspective, the magnets from an MRI are approximately 100,000 times stronger than the Earth's magnetic field. Well, the unnamed patient decided to insert a toy to plug the passage, if you know what I'm talking about, before going into the scanner. The hidden toy caused the woman to be screaming in agony as it tried to make an exit through her body to the magnet surrounding her. Now, before you go into an MRI scanner, the consultant does ask if you have anything metal on you or anything that's been placed inside of you for surgery, like a pacemaker or metal plates for reconstruction. The woman was asked, but apparently she believed her toy was made from 100% silicone. Yeah, that didn't seem to be the case. She didn't declare it because she thought it was safe, but unfortunately, it was a metal core. The giant magnet caused the metal core to be attracted to it and attempted to work its way out. An image of the toy has been circulating online, much to the horror of social media users. The picture of the alleged incident was shared on X by user DreadPirate0, who wrote, "Never wear a butt plug to your MRI appointment. My God." It was claimed that the magnet caused the toy to shoot up into the person's chest cavity at the speed of sound. Holy cow. It's claimed that the patient miraculously survived the incident, but did sustain major injuries. No kidding. A report tells of a patient left screaming after undergoing the MRI scan. The health professional who filed the report has not been named. They stated she went in for the MRI, and when the MRI was over and the tech was pulling the table out, the patient started to scream. The patient stated that she felt nauseous, was in pain, and felt like she was going to pass out. An ambulance was called for this patient, and she was sent to the hospital. The patient was checked out by a radiologist at the site before transport to ensure she was doing okay. Patient has not returned any of our calls to try and follow up to see how she's doing. Of course, she's embarrassed. Medical expert has cast doubt on some of the details of the story, saying that the speed of sound part is probably an exaggeration. Professor Adam Taylor is an expert on human anatomy at Lancaster University. He says the speed at which the ferromagnetic materials move in an MRI field is proportional to the mass of the object and how far away the magnetic field is. Things such as paper clips or hairpins would easily reach 40 miles an hour if within the field. As for this toy, which was predominantly silicone with a metallic core, there is potential that it moved at the speed, but not close to the speed of sound. Either way, this person is going to be recovering for a while. A school teacher who decided to cross the Pacific Ocean on a small boat by himself has left people utterly terrified. Seattle man Luke shared his month-long journey over his TikTok last year, unlocking our biggest fear. He sailed a staggering 3,000 miles across the Pacific Ocean on a small 27-foot sailboat. Yeah, I'm not doing that. No friggin' way. In one clip, viewers witnessed him screaming into the one place on Earth no one will hear, and it's truly mind-blowing. It's a 10-day sailing from Tonga to New Zealand, and it's one of the first days where I really lost wind, Luke said. It's super, super flat, super, super calm, and I'm about 180 miles north of New Zealand right now, and there's just nobody anywhere. I'm likely a couple, 100 miles from the closest person. And when it's super, super flat and calm out like this, I like to go on the bell, and where I am now, and just start yelling, help, help. Nobody. Very few places on the planet where you can scream at the top of your lungs and nobody will come find you. Oh my gosh. Finally, a zoo in Switzerland said winter storms allowed 2 red pandas to escape their enclosure, and one of the animals wandered all the way into a nearby woodlands. The Walter Zoo in Gosso said heavy snowfall caused branches to break in the red panda enclosure, and giving them a path for a female red pandas, Lee and Yen, to climb to freedom. Lee traveled only a few yards and was found munching on branches. Well, you know what? Yen was more adventurous. They followed the tracks to find the little panda. Yes, they found it, and they were still happy as ever. Red pandas are just so cute, aren't they? Very, very cute. All right, big thank you to all our guests tonight. Say goodnight to them. Hello, this is Ron Bubblefoot Bob. Rocking in the background with Little Brother is watching. Bubblefoot is the official Spaced Out Radio. Rocking us in and out of this show. Get your horns up for the guitar god himself. Special thanks to everybody listening now or cars, wherever you may be. Thank you to everyone in our chat rooms tonight. Twitch, Elton, Facebook, LinkedIn, Space Travelers Club, and on X. I know you're out there somewhere. Remember, this show is copyright. This is Radio Discord Media Ventures Limited. Thank you so much for choosing to share your evening with us. Because together, my friend, make a mistake. We're watching. Yes, the blue train has docked for the night. But soon, my friends, we shall ride again. The seats are unexpendable. Your tickets are expired. And if you want to bring a friend, we've got you for that too. Thank you. Good show. Good frickin' show. We did well there. Really? Why does this do this crap? Oh, man. Boom. 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 There we go. What's that doing over there? Get over here. All right, there we go. Human Carl, do you really hate the Dave 101? Do you really? Human Carl, do you hate it? Do you hate it, Human Carl? All right, let me do this here. Publish. And this is, no, fuck off. Publish. Jan 9. In 2 seconds. Publish. There we go. Mm-hmm. La-di-dee, la-di-da. La-di-dee, la-di-da. Tomorrow night on the show, Joe Monk will be on the show. The Joe Monk. Mm-hmm. Oob to Joe's Main. You've got radio shows. Joe's actually an incredible experiencer. We're going to talk about his near-death experience, his growing hair experience, his UFO experience, and he's got aliens. He do. He got aliens, people. Joe's got aliens. Joe will take questions. Yep. The password for tomorrow night, I can tell you right now, is going to be OOB. OOB is your password. that should be done. There we go. Here. View. And download. Oh, damn it, I did it again. Download. Joe will be audio only. All right, got that. Let's go here. All right. Where are you guys? There you are. I like watermelon. I do. No issue with watermelon whatsoever. Nothing to be nervous about, Oob. Nothing to be nervous about. It's like riding a horse. We're just talking. Oob. He's pumped. Totally pumped. Tim Mothman's goatee is always perfect. Remember, if you're coming to join us for Vegas, May 1st to 5th at the Orleans, Tim Mothman and his goatee will be there. He's giving away free tugs on the goatee. Free tugs. Oh, Joe, that's an old picture you just sent me. Dude, that's an old picture. Your hair doesn't have any gray in that. I think I'm going to have a bowl of Lucky Charms after this. I decided not to last night, but I think I deserve it tonight. Excuse me. All right, everybody, I'm going to peace on out of here early. Thank you to Cosmic Joe, Deborah Rooney, Major Lee, Human Carl, and Dead Man. Tomorrow night on the show, Joe will be in It's going to be great. And he's not going to swear tomorrow night. Thank you very much. If you're new, don't forget to hit subscribe, ring that bell, as we're here 7 days a week. And if you've been with us a while, don't forget to share the show and tell a friend. That's all we ask. See you tomorrow night, everybody. Take care.
Stay healthy, my friend.
You too.
If you need bail money, give me a call.
Always, Dad. Take care.
You too.